you doing, all you beautiful sons of bitches? It's your boy Bax here, and today we got the boys Kino and Jan back, and we are looking at the Ant video, the absolute classic video that just shows off his video essayist skills. Always evil races in fantasy are kinda boring. So, right from the get-go, how much do you guys agree with that statement?
Evil races are evil from the get-go.
Yeah,
I
like
don't really agree with
that
it.
they're boring. That
Oh, they're
we're
boring?
a race where damn near every single member of the race is boring. How much do you guys agree with that?
Depends on the story and how it's executed. But if we're talking about like races and Tolkien, I strongly disagree. If we're talking about orcs, they serve a major purpose in the story,
Hmm.
and I don't see. I'm going to assume that Ant's going to say, "Oh well, this is bad because it will remind people of black people or something," which is a very stupid sentiment that I've seen
Yeah.
repeated on and on again. Like especially from like that one extra credits
Ah,
video.
they're never living that
Classic.
shit down. Jan,
Classic, yeah.
Jan, what about you? What do you think?
I think two things. I think first of all, obviously no, because I don't know how you could even define that it's definitively boring. And for two, I would really like video essays on the internet to stop telling me what is fun and what is boring, as if that shit is provable at all, because
Yes.
people can find anything fun and anything boring. So
Yes.
just have the balls and say that it's good or bad. And for two, you can't prove that it's definitively good or bad, because as Kino said, it's contingent on the writing, right? Like
Yes.
you can do it well, you can do it poorly. That's the general consensus. If you think that it's boring, if this entire video is just, oh, I think that it's boring, I guess that's fine, but then why would you make that video at all? You could have just kept that to yourself.
Yes. Well, anyway, yeah, my opinions on evil races. I mean, I don't really give a damn. It's like if they're all evil, if they're all good, if it's like a half and half, what the hell ever. I just like anyway. Let's just get into it, shall we?
One of the staples of science fiction and fantasy fiction.
Oh, hey, did you have a cold when you make this? You sound like your voice sounds off in this
No.
video. Anyway.
One like equals one prayer for Ant and his cold. Please. He
Yes.
must overcome. We must preserve him for content.
Yes, we have to keep milking him for all he's worth. He's one of the biggest lol cows on my
He
channel.
cannot die. He
Yes.
cannot die. If he
Yeah.
dies, think about the long-standing ecological implications. All right.
Ha! Oh, anyway, all right.
One of the staples of science fiction and fantasy fiction is the evil army that needs to be stopped. It's not a new narrative by any means. Every genre has that scene where the lone hero steps out, or maybe a few plucky friends, and takes a stand against the forces of darkness. Orcs, goblins, dark elves, zombies, aliens, take your pick. They're bad and aren't here to negotiate. The heroes mowing down legions of enemies is a power fantasy that dates back to the days of mythology. Modern myths, the fantasy and sci-fi sagas we've come to love, are chock full of them. From Star Wars' stormtroopers to Lord of the Rings orc armies. Be it Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer 40k, or even Resident Evil, the evil army serves as the ultimate
Very
canon.
quickly, because
These
I'm
are
immediately
evil races.
well, no, I'm immediately triggered. 40k. Why are you bringing up 40k as an example of this when everyone is evil in 40? Well, I guess you could argue everyone
Yeah,
has various degrees of evil in 40k. That's a
Yes.
really bad
yeah,
example.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
And I'm just like raising an eyebrow at zombies because zombies aren't a
yeah,
race.
same. Yeah,
Yes.
no, they're a disease, right? Like they're a group of So does he just mean like enemies?
I think he just means
Is
like
it
a
bad?
mindless horde, like an entire
Yeah, like the
group
foot
of guys
soldiers,
coming to
right?
kill you. Cause like he put the stormtroopers on there, like, bruh, there's the stormtroopers in the Galactic Empire. They're not a fucking race. Well, I mean, you could argue that like they're all humans, they are, but they're not a race. They're just a fucking faction.
Yeah, like he should say what he means. I think is like we call them foot soldiers, right? And like
Yes.
actual writing archetypes, just like nameless Joe Schmoes who were fighting because they're on the other
Mooks.
team.
Mooks.
Yep, exactly. So like I don't. If he thinks that in of itself is boring, I'm really interested to see how that's possible. Given I can't even think of something that's at all action based that doesn't include them in some capacity. But all right,
Cannon fodder.
making this hard for
You can knock
himself by including them. I feel.
Yep.
cannon fodder. You can knock down as many as you want and never feel anything more than catharsis because hey, they're evil. And I'd be lying if I said some of the coolest scenes in genre history aren't just a few heroes fighting armies of darkness. I mean, the entire movie Army of Darkness is just one awesome scene after the other. But what if we extended it beyond an army? What if it's an evil race? A species of creatures so foul, so evil, that the only moral obligation you have is to obliterate them in their entirety. In games, that's a useful tool. Evil races and species lend themselves well for random encounters, where the players shouldn't think too hard about what they're doing. In films or books, they can lend themselves to cool set pieces, where the heroes can take them down one at a time. But as characters, well, they're kind of boring, aren't they? Pure evil is kind of hard to fathom, especially entire races where
I'd pause a second.
Yeah.
So, as characters, what do you mean by that? They're not. The sins in Devil May Cry are not characters. They are almost obstacles for you to overcome. And conversely, much the same way, like some random apostles in Berserk, or even non-apostles, just like regular demon mooks, right? They're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. They're not characters. They can just be in like a metatextual sense, they can be a metaphor for whatever you perceive to be, an adversarial thing, like a force in your life. Like, of course, for the purpose of storytelling, we often give them shapes and sizes, and they're often going to be humanoid, possibly. They're often going to be fighting in direct combat. But, the the apostles in Berserk are, in a in a sense, just a representation for things that are trying to get Guts to stop, either by directly killing him or, causing him to shake in his convictions,
Mm-hmm.
which,
Yeah.
of course, speaks to his desire to struggle on and overcome. They could be
Yeah.
anything, but they just happen to be mooks so that we have an action set piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're personifications of abstract concepts more
Yeah.
so than real life people or groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they don't have a character, and they don't need to have a character. Like they don't need to have a character like the group of apostles that Guts has to wade his way through does not need to have a character any more than the wall that's standing between him and wherever he's trying to get to. Right? They are
Yeah.
just something that's in the way that is trying to stop him.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. That's kind of all they need to be.
Yeah. So is it? Yeah. Yeah.
evil, not survival, not some higher goal, not even necessarily logical objectives, is the highest good for them. An entire race with evil programmed into their DNA is dull. What do they
Why?
want? To hurt others? Why?
Pause a second. Has anyone here ever read Blood Meridian?
Yes, I have it with me right now, actually, on my desk.
So,
No.
would anyone on the planet make the case that Judge Holden is an inherently boring character?
No,
I feel like it'd
absolutely
be
not. He's the most
extremely
famous
difficult
character.
to make that argument. It'd be extremely difficult to make that argument, right? And like
Mhm.
he is pure evil. That's like his point.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a
Yeah.
satanic misanthropic allegory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and even then, like public consensus, you see a lot of people asking for less sympathetic villains and more just straight to the point, no tragic backstory, just evil for the sake of being evil. So I feel as though that kind of disproves this whole notion that just upfront evil villains are boring because people crave it.
yeah.
Yeah. Like another perhaps a more mild example, like Syndrome from The Incredibles. What
Mhm.
positive
Yeah.
qualities does he have? He's just a guy who was obsessive and then let his obsession consume him to the point that he wants to destroy the world as like, in vengeance, essentially.
Or at the very
Mhm.
least, he wants to kill all the old superheroes so that way he can be
Yes.
a new superhero. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like level the playing field in like a very fucked up way, right? Yeah,
Yes.
no, it's a case of he's like and he is like, Syndrome is incredibly entertaining, incredibly compelling. It's like a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are evil can still be interesting. Parallels in real world. How many evil figures are there in history that people find compelling, from serial killers to tyrants to anything, right? Like
Mhm.
Mhm.
we agree they're evil people, but it's why they do what they do that can make them compelling, or just their presence. Like the villain doesn't need to be complex to be, to have like a lasting impact. Like the Emperor in original Star Wars isn't particularly complex.
Sidious,
Yeah.
yeah. Dude,
Yeah.
Sidious, if you've read the Plagueis novel and you saw fucking Plagueis training a young Sidious, a young Palpatine up, dude, you could tell Palpatine was practically born to be a Sith. Like,
Yeah.
it,
No,
not,
exactly.
not even funny, bro. Anyway.
Yeah, a character that comes to me to my mind is Jack Horner from the Puss in Boots: The Last Wish movie because
That's another good
his whole
example. Yeah.
yeah, the whole point of his character was like poking fun at the idea of having a sympathetic villain. And just the running gag with him is that, oh, is there more to him than besides being evil? And there wasn't.
No.
But that's what. But that was still made him an entertaining character nonetheless.
Yeah. Like I think a lot of this has to do with how it can be anything from how the character speaks to how they behave to the nature of the goal itself can be entertaining, right? Like in like a Pinky and the Brain style scheme where like they're trying to do bad, but it's just really funny
Mm-hmm.
the way that it ends up working, right? Like
Yeah.
this is such a myopic statement that I think he's thinking of a very specific subset of character archetypes, and he's not doing a good job of covering all his bases because this is a ludicrous statement on its face.
Yeah, I would say if I were to like give him like Steelman a point, I would say Quaritch from Avatar would be a good example because just framing him as simply being a bad guy, I would call that poor writing because if you go off the complexities of the Avatar movie, there's a lot to like and admire about him,
I,
and
I,
in terms of characterization.
I would even go more like directly to what I think he's speaking to. It's like he's just speaking purely to the idea, Lurtz, right? The bigger guy who fights Aragorn at Amon Hen. It's
Mhm.
like that guy doesn't have a lot, like Darth Maul in the first movie, absent any other context, right? Like Phantom Menace, rather specifically. It's like that
Yeah,
guy doesn't have a lot of character. It's like, yeah, no, that's probably true, but
Yeah.
like that
yeah.
doesn't mean he can't be
So is the Sarlacc. So is the Sarlacc.
yeah, but that doesn't mean it can't be entertaining, right? Like
Yeah.
it's still it's like even in the best version of his argument, saying that it's definitively boring, I think is difficult. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, he's making this a lot harder for himself than it really needs to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, man, let me go back a
Yeah,
little bit.
crack on.
Okay.
To hurt others? Why? Because they're evil? See, it just creates a creative dead end, and I'm not the biggest fan of creative dead ends. That's
Who cares, Ant? It's like, as long as it's
Yeah,
entertaining, it's fine. It's like,
but it's also number one that's like argument zero, right? It's like who cares? It
yes.
can be fun. People are just here to be entertained. Number two, it's not even a creative dead end. It's like they're evil. It's like, yeah, but the reason that they are evil can be interesting in of itself by like the facet in which they're being evil, right?
Yeah.
Like it
Mhm.
Sauron isn't a like super pluridimensional villain. The entire point of him is that he's like an evil angel, like a dark angel, effectively, right?
Right.
Who's obsessed
Mhm.
with order. But just in and of itself, the fact that his evil tangents off the desire for absolute and complete order in the universe is itself interesting. That can be an interesting conversation starter, and
Hmm.
it's not a creative because while Sauron himself might be that one-dimensional evil, and the forces that he employs generally can be that one-dimensional evil. Saruman isn't a one-dimensional evil completely.
No.
The fuck, what are they called? The Easterlings. Or, no, the Hadrum men, I think. The guys that like have the elephants and everything.
Yeah.
The
I forget
Dunderlings.
that.
The Dunderlings.
Yeah, like them. They're the one. Like they, if you read the books, the reason they're fighting for Sauron is because they have a past, like a grudge and umbrage with Gondor, right?
Yeah, with the people of
So
Rohan. Yeah.
yeah, like that doesn't mean it's a creative dead end, right? Like
Right. Yeah, and a lot of other stories they can serve as cautionary tales, just people who are purely evil, like as a warning to the viewer to not follow in their footsteps.
yeah, like we can understand and agree that Sauron is definitively evil without necessarily being like, okay, that's all there is to him. It's like no, there's more to the particular type of evil and how he's going about pursuing it.
Let's see.
Hmm.
What's so this guy asked, what do you guys think of a pure evil race like D&D's Drow or Warhammer's Dark Eldar or Warhammer Fantasy's Beastmen, Lord of the Rings orcs, etc. Do you guys think they're helpful narratively or just think that they might be too one-dimensional? And replies, evil races are just boring. It's an excuse to not think up a motivation that's interesting. Even gnolls are more interesting since they're driven on a spiritual level by an unending, agonizing hunger. At least that's interesting. And then so yeah.
Wait,
I mean, I
but
find the
and
idea of I mean, I find the idea of a group that's purely dedicated on conquering and pillaging to be interesting. Like
uh,
that's a force that can be fought by the
Mm,
heroes.
yeah.
unfortunately for Ant, I play extensive amounts of D&D and Pathfinder. And not only can you make that same argument he just made for Knowles for all of those races there listed, it's arguably more interesting for like a society like the Drow, because in the original lore, Drow are so the reason very abridged because obviously D&D has a shit ton of stuff that goes into it, but
Mhm.
very abridged. The Drow worship a goddess called Loth, who was cast down into the Underdark by fuck, what's the elven god's name? I can't remember. I don't play Forgotten Realms settings too much, but it was basically the other elven god that cast them into the Underdark, and for that reason, the Drow created essentially like a matriarchal society because the female priestesses can, because Loth itself is like a female deity, they can reach and connect, make a connection with Loth easier. So they have like a matriarchal society. It's also there's like the sexual dimorphism has shifted. Like Drow females are actually taller and stronger than Drow males, so they dominate the society effectively. But yeah, it evolves into like a whole bunch of slavery and everything. The other thing, though, that's worth considering is the environment of the Underdark itself is dominated by anything ranging from mind flayers to, like other races hell-bent on trying to survive in that harsh environment. So the Drow are evil, yes, but to say that they were just evil because they are like an evil race in the same way that even the orcs in Lord of the Rings, they are fallen, corrupted elves. That is their, like, again, very succinctly, that is their law. So every single thing that is evil is generally not just evil for evil's sake. They have some sort of ambition, right? Or like
Mhm.
some purpose behind why they are the way they are. You can find that
Hmm.
various levels of detailed, interesting, or deep, but to suggest that every race is just not to say nothing of Warhammer, by the way, where basically every single race has an extensive like 10 novel, lore compendium
Series.
of
Yeah.
why they are the way they are.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
this is not a strong rebuttal from him at all because what the first person said is just inaccurate. And in case of are they helpful narratively, I don't know how you could in like a strict measurable sense, I don't know how you could argue they are not helpful narratively when their presence objectively helps move the plot along, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
and like you
people.
said, Jan, I felt as though you rebutted it pretty well by saying, "Oh, if you simply ask why they're evil, then that in itself is interesting."
Yeah, no, and then with the other question of this, which I find like kind of weirder, is like, is it helpful narrative? It's like, how can it not be? How is it not helpful narratively to, up the stakes and, make the scenario more interesting that the Urukai and Orcs ambush, the Fellowship at Amon Hen? How is it not interesting that Boromir ends up dying? How does it not help the narrative that this, force was there? Of course it is, right? Like, you have to be.
Mhm.
I don't know how you could disagree with that. It's like the argument that should be is like, is it better or worse that they are nameless, faceless goons? Which that would be a completely different discussion, right? But
Mhm.
to just ask the question of is it helpful narratively, I don't think that's useful at all. Like to ask that question, because of course they are.
Yeah.
Depends how the writer employs them, right? But they can
Mhm.
be or they can't be. Depends how they're used.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
It's the naive statement I
Yeah.
put on Twitter, the platform where ideas are
Hang on. What an example of what I think is an evil race done well? The Cenobites. They're not and we'll get to that later.
Oh,
And we'll hang on.
okay.
Keep whatever you want to say about them in your back pocket. We'll get to them later. They're not evil. They just think that torture and mutilation is the highest form of joy, and they want to share their pleasures. Anyway, moving
until
on.
it's been discussed
Hang
a
on,
few
hang
days
on,
ago,
hang on. Say
as
what
of
you're gonna
this
say
writing.
later.
And immediately, I got the
Storing
response
it.
you'd expect from that kind of site. Tons of people
Yeah, smart people dogpiled your ass, and deservedly so.
provided counterexamples of evil races to show how wrong I was.
Yes.
Except most of
Good.
the counterexamples weren't actually evil races.
Oh, really?
So naturally, like any reasonable person, I
Wait, so I would need a really strong definition from you at this point what you mean by evil race, because what you outlined there in that rebuttal is weak because you're wrong about those examples.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, the initial tweet rather was wrong about those examples and you didn't acknowledge their incorrectness, and your definition of an evil race is flimsy. Like, by your definition of an evil race, all of those races that the person listed satisfy that definition, and they are incorrect. So, like, you need to come up with something new.
Here's what Ann says. Least you could do is tag me. But yes, evil races are boring. Evil societies, evil cultures, that's interesting. But a generic evil race who are bad just because it's hardwired into their DNA? Dull. At least give them a reason they're seen as evil. Twisted morality? Hunger?
Whoa. How can you... Wait, evil societies and evil cultures are fine, but evil races aren't? What? So the Drow are okay, because the Drow are a culture, just so we're clear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that culture is, that culture is one of, an ethnostatic nature, which means that the Drow in Drow society dominate, and everyone else, well, specifically the Drow females dominate, and then the Drow males are under that, and then everyone else is slaves, basically. That's like their cultural, like that's their structure, right? But so they're fine, right? Because their evil is cultural.
Yes.
So
responded.
here's a challenge. What race could you even name, like a fantasy race that you could name whose evil isn't also cultural and societal?
There you
'Cause the
go,
orcs don't
Ant.
qualify.
There's your challenge. Comment below.
Clearly,
Yeah.
the smartest idea in the room. I am full of these. But what surprised me more was that in my response, a lot of people agreed with me.
Oh,
Even
really?
people who initially disagreed.
Why would you be
seemed
surprised by
to
that
come
if you think
around
what you're
when I
saying
laid
is
out my
correct?
case. Within a day, tens of thousands of people responded to my post, and many of them argued, and I responded, and I used the notes from that conversation to draft this video essay.
Oh, joy.
My argument
What a horrible idea. So this entire video is produced by Twitter responses. That's a bold move.
Yeah.
is simple. What a lot of people confuse for pure evil races is actually a little more complicated.
Oh, really?
There are very few races that are pure evil due to evil being hardwired into their DNA.
Would you guys agree with that statement? There are very few fictional races that are pure evil because pure evil is not hardwired into their DNA.
Sorry, is it very few races that are pure evil because it's... Could you play them back one more time?
Okay,
Just
hang on, hang on.
to be clear. Yeah.
Alright,
Sorry.
let me go back a bit. Alright.
There are very few races that are pure evil due to evil being hardwired into their DNA.
Okay, there are very few evil races due to evil being hardwired into their DNA.
I mean,
Depends. Go ahead. Sorry, Jack. I'll go after.
I mean, it's just a confusing statement because in fiction, like the possibilities are endless.
Yes.
I don't really know
What does
how you would...
what does hardwired into their DNA even mean? For one.
So if I was to like hype a Steelman this, right? I guess what he is going for is the idea of like nurture versus nature.
Mm-hmm.
Where like if you took a member of this race and you put them in any conceivable environment, they would be evil no matter what, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, so I guess that's broadly agreeable, but like that at that point, it's like you're talking about something that's like not even sapient, right? Really,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a case of like the Tyranids, right?
Mm-hmm.
From 40K.
Oh, yeah.
Their brand of evil is just we just want to eat everything because
Yes.
that's what we do. We're like this faction that consumes everything, and eventually that'll destroy everything. Which we could call the outcome of that. Yeah, the movie Bobs. We could call the outcome of that evil, but like at that point you're considering intent as like, again, he's not even really defined what he means by evil, so I don't know if he gets to that. But evil is
Yes.
difficult because evil almost necessarily implies intent, right? Or like an evil will that's trying to, by some way, shape, or fashion, commit an evil deed. So like if something is hard coded to be evil in their DNA, at that point, a question merits interrogating is, could we even consider them evil? Because they don't get a choice, right? Like, they're not making a choice to be evil. They just do evil things.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, is a hurricane evil because it destroys a building, sort of thing? It's almost like a force of nature at that point, right?
Yes.
So I guess I'd have to agree with, to go back to the point, I guess I'd have to agree with his statement, but the statement is incredibly vacuous because, of course, in order for something to even be considered evil, it implies there's a moral choice they made. So for it to be intrinsic kind of invalidates the concept of them even being evil in the first place.
Yeah.
To put it in like a
Rather,
roundabout way.
creatives find more interesting ways to justify a culture being an adversary for their heroes. Additionally, just because a race is dangerous to us doesn't make them inherently evil, but on that same note,
We don't care. They're still dangerous.
Yeah, like it's a case of, again, I just would really like to know if these are his criteria, like what qualifies, because like almost nothing can
Yeah.
at this point, right? Like
Yeah.
it would have to again be like a mindless, non-sapient entity that just destroys, right? But those
Yeah.
are pretty. I agree, those are pretty rare, but those also again, like there's a I don't know how much people follow 40k discourse, but there's a pretty ongoing debate, I would say, that has merit about whether the Tyranids are even evil, because they're just a thing that's trying to survive and destroying everything, almost incidentally by its
Mhm.
propagation. But there's not an intent to do that, or we don't know at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or there's no choice at the very least, no
Yeah.
conscious choice. So are they evil? It's like, yeah. I feel this is a thing that he's not interrogating at this point. Maybe he will, but yeah, I would need an example at this point. Like, what are you even talking about?
Right.
a race not being evil doesn't automatically make them much of softies either. The final portion of this video will analyze the one way I think an evil race or society is most compelling, when they're used to serve an internal conflict rather than an external one.
What do you guys think of that claim? Evil races are more compelling when they serve an interior, and I think he means internal here, but he typed out interior, an internal conflict rather than an external one.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I-
He meant internal, but again, it goes down to how do you verify this? Like I feel as though it's so broad that any story can make the concept work if it's
I-
just well written. Again, it just all depends on if it's well written or not.
Yeah, this is just generally advice to him, I suppose.
Yes.
This is actually a place where you should punctuate these with specifics,
Mm-hmm.
because this is becoming very difficult to follow on a conceptual level.
Yeah.
Because evil can mean so much to so many people. I need specifics to understand what you mean by it. To
Mm-hmm.
say nothing of the fact that what is compelling is inherently subjective anyway. Like, people can find anything compelling. It's not measurable what is more or less compelling definitively, right? So it's hard to
Mhm.
make this claim at all. So I would say I disagree with the claim, because I don't know how you would even go about proving it.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy. And like, what does he even mean by internal versus external conflict? Does he mean like internal means like it's a psychological for the characters like dilemma, versus an external would be like they are a threat from outside of like the main status quo that needs to be repelled? Because I don't know that that's true at all. Like, can it not be compelling when the guardsmen need to defend themselves against Tyranids? Like, I don't know what you mean.
I
I
don't
need
know.
more.
Hopefully he gets more specific when we get into that further into this. We're still on the fucking prologue. Holy fuck.
Than an external one. Now, before we start,
like,
I
this
do
is
want to
very difficult
emphasize
to follow
I'm
at
not
this
going
point.
to draw any real-world parallels between these fictional races and real human society.
I'ma hold you to that, Ant. So if you go saying that orcs are black people, we're gonna ream you for that.
The reason for this is that we've all had this discussion already. We all know those talking points, and I don't want to make any broad assumptions about the authors in question and their intentionality.
Okay,
with the text.
sorry, this is like really, really, really petty, but is it is it fair to assume that like Joe Rando, who just reads a comic book and has maybe watched Lord of the Rings once, is it fair to assume that he's familiar with the fucking online discourse about orcs and black people?
No, not at all.
No.
Why the fuck would he know? Because, like, what do you mean?
It's a very niche subject.
Yes.
Let's be clear.
Yeah.
a niche subject that is only made by terminally online leftoids. Anyway.
Yeah.
I want to analyze
Yeah.
this topic from a different perspective as well. I'm reading this as a storyteller. Does this make a compelling narrative? If you're expecting a discussion about that, you're not going to get it here. Rather, we're going to focus right now on storytelling.
And what's he then that says I play the villain?
For the purposes of this video, let's define evil. An evil
Okay.
act is when you do something awful to someone with the intent of causing pain or suffering, either out of rage, bigotry, hatred, or just the sake of it. However, you have to be...
Can you rewind that, please? I need to hear him again.
Alright. Go back a
Sorry.
bit. Alright.
So it all
Intent
boils
of-
down to intent.
I suppose.
with the intent of causing pain or suffering, either out of rage, bigotry, hatred, or just the sake of it. However, you have to be able to understand the intent of your actions, and it can't be a byproduct of your evolutionary processes. A lion isn't evil
Okay,
for
wait,
eating
pause. It can't be a byproduct of your evolutionary processes. So you've just completely excluded point one, because it is impossible for it is now impossible for a race to be biologically, predisposed, like, as he would say, genetically evil and to also be evil. These are contradictory now. You need to sort this out. It's impossible to create number one.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's you fucked yourself. It took
Yeah.
you 30 seconds.
You done played yourself.
It's because, like, to be clear, this is an agreeable definition, but like you should have really thought about this before you put that in your prologue. Because we can go from here, but just so you know, everyone now has to discount what you said about point one because that's completely moot.
Yeah.
It cannot be more or less compelling when one of them cannot even be considered evil, like by your own definition. So like, yeah.
Anyway.
a gazelle, nor are you evil for stepping on a spider. But if you picked up a spider and plucked its legs off, yeah, that's evil. Does it make sense? Good. Now look, purely based on the number of responses I got, I'm going to cut off the worst counter-argument I received at the start.
Please, God.
This is God.
Freddy
No,
Krueger?
I love evil villains. Saying a race of pure evil is boring is not the same as saying a pure evil villain is boring. I really don't want every bad guy to be a misunderstood sad boy.
Destruction!
Pause for a second.
Good.
Kefka Palazzo, not a good example to go with.
No,
Yeah.
I think Kefka is his example of like, I'm fine with this kind of villain. I'm fine with a motherfucker who just wants to cause destruction and shit. I think that's what he's getting at with him.
Yeah. But the point of, so this is going more to Final Fantasy VI. I've not played it in a bit, but like, isn't the point of Kefka that him and Terra are supposed to be like inverse, where Terra is like born of a race that, was viewed on some level as evil or destructive, and Kefka is a man who chooses to be that way, where Terra is a person who chooses the inverse.
Yes.
So it's like
Yeah.
a case of, so it's like a case that's like the duality between them. And to say that you can't have an evil villain but have an evil race, it's like, okay, what if there were multiple Kefkas? 2, 3, 4? At which point is At which point is the sample big enough?
Yeah, and I will say it's what everything you said is true, Jan, in Final Fantasy VI. I'm not sure how well those themes are communicated in the Dissidia fighting game, which is what this is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
which like
Well,
well, I mean, I'd say from what I've played Dissidia a little bit, and like Kefka's character, it's hard to get Kefka wrong, to be fair, because Kefka is just
Okay.
this. He wants to destroy everything because he thinks life is meaningless. But ultimately, like my point, I suppose, so to speak, is what makes Kefka compelling to you in isolation that makes him unacceptable in a group setting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, why is that a problem? Because if we agree Kefka is it just like because Kefka's uniqueness makes him, because like Kefka as a concept is not unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of misanthropic nihilists that have existed. Like Johann Liebert is another one in Monster.
You'd say Joker.
Joker is another one.
Yeah.
Very valid. Like it's so if there was like and since we've already discounted the biology aspect of this, since if something like per your definition, and if Kefka had a gene, like a genome inside of him that made it so that he was this way, he would no longer qualify as evil, right?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't, it's not an intent thing, it's just that is what he is. So if we eliminate that, could that not be a culture of misanthropic nihilists? Hypothetically, that could be interesting. At that point, there'd be an evil race, right? That they all have the same ideology as Kafka, and they're working towards it as a group. Why are they not interesting like Kafka is?
Yeah.
Like, again,
Anyway.
it's very nebulous.
It is what makes life worth living.
Now, what makes a villain like the Joker or Freddy Krueger fascinating isn't that they're secretly tragic, but rather that they choose to be as vile as they are. If you break both of these characters down to their basic characteristics, they're very small, very petty men, but their theatrical side, their menace, their cruelty, that makes them compelling. And the fact that they constantly
I don't see why this isn't acceptable on a group level, because they
Yeah.
can't all naturally come to a like evil conclusion, or like a conclusion to be to actively engage in warfare, or just just be just stereotypical bad guys,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
the
like,
Empire, for instance.
Well, a very simple example. This is just hypothetical, but like hypothetically, let's say there was a story where people wanted to create a group of like soldiers, right? And they imbued them to basically all be like Kefka, that they love to destroy, because the idea was we're gonna send them when we need something ruined, right?
Yeah.
So they're like technically like a race or a group of people, right? Could they not be compelling? Could their history not be compelling? Could, the sort of cultural, style that if they should go renegade, they maybe create, could that not be compelling? Like, again, it's so arbitrary, because if you can, like, again, you fuck yourself, because if you concede that the singular individual can be interesting, how could you then argue it's necessarily not interesting in a group setting?
Exactly.
Like you've already conceded this can be interesting, so now why doesn't it work for a group? Explain, please.
choose to be this vile, to go to such lengths to enact their cruelty, that's compelling. What makes evil interesting, at least to me, is the choice to be evil. Many villains have incredible abilities, but simply make self-serving or convenient choices to reach their goals faster. Even if the goals are sympathetic, their choice to inflict harm makes them vile and compelling. This is especially true if the villain seems to lack the moral limitations that keep most of us normal people from diving off the deep end. And you can see this everywhere, from the classic works of literature like Iago from Othello or Aaron the Moor from Titus Andronicus, all the way up to No Country for Old Men's Anton and Dragon Ball Z's Cell. Yeah, I bet you didn't expect me to compare Dragon Ball Z to Shakespeare, but that's where we're at right now. Claudius from Hamlet is by...
Oh, really? But it's like, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? Like...
most accounts, an actually decent king, but he still murdered his brother to get the throne. While he feels guilty over the murder, he never asks for redemption, because that would mean facing the consequences of his actions, or giving up what he has. And he doesn't want that. They see themselves as evil, even if they have admirable qualities, and that's interesting. Other villains are total monsters.
No. Whoa. They see themselves as evil? Wouldn't that necessarily mean that he'd, like...
That would defeat the point, yeah.
Wouldn't that defeat your own point, Ant? The hell?
But it's also, they see themselves as evil as, like, they don't need to, and like the fact that they don't acknowledge their own atrocities doesn't mean they don't see themselves, they see themselves as evil. It can mean that they're just deluded. Right?
Yeah, like he just showed Vader right there. Like, the Sith in general do not give a flying fuck about morality. So
yeah, like that's their entire point, right? Like they are they want to, as far as they're concerned, the paradigm of morality begins and ends with power. So,
yes.
Like, and I guess he's about to appeal to Frollo as like an example of a villain who's deluded, but I just don't know why we're laying all this groundwork when, like, what was the point of pointing out that some of them can be this? You're still not addressing the core issue, which is why it's interesting in isolation and not in a group setting. That's what you should be trying to prove, but you're not doing that.
But see themselves as the hero. Every 90s kid probably thought of Frollo when I thought of that. Going forward, we need a baseline as to what I consider to be pure evil. There is one that personifies evil the most. In my opinion, of course. That's Michael Myers from Halloween.
Moving on.
Every other villain has some goal, either selfish or grandiose, and they serve that goal. But Myers? He just wants to hurt people. He doesn't seem to take any enjoyment in it like Freddy Krueger. He just does it. There's no...
Wait. Okay,
Right?
yeah, perfect. The scene where he's just staring, mesmerized at the person he just nails to a wall with a kitchen knife. You don't think that he's enjoying that?
Yeah, he's very stoic. That's a core part of his character, but that we don't see what he's getting from internally.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's on some level we like kind of just the fact that he chooses that's the point of choice, right? The fact that he
Yeah.
chooses to do it means that it's something he wants to do because he derives from it whatever benefit he thinks he derives from it. Like he it's very Michael Myers is very simple. He just likes killing. Like
Yeah.
and we definitively know he likes killing because no matter what context he's put, like the first thing he does after like when he's in the psych ward, right? He just stares out a window longingly because he wants to get out there and kill some more. And then when he's presented with an opportunity, the reason he goes after Laurie Strode is because it's the first person he saw. He's like, all right, I'm killing you now because I want to do that. That's what he likes.
And even
right?
after he
So-
discovers Laurie's his sister, he's still gonna kill her. So, yeah.
Yeah, like he doesn't give a fuck, and it's like the idea that we don't know that he's less as Kino pointed out, he's less reveling in it overtly because he doesn't talk, he doesn't speak, but this gesture, he just killed a man and he's just kind of staring. It's like, what do you think the scene is trying to tell you? He's staring at it like a piece of artwork, and then when
His
at the end
masterpiece.
and then when he tries to kill Laurie, he like puts all the corpses of her friends that he killed before her. That's another choice he made. He could have just murdered her immediately, but he chose to go out of his way to kill all her friends and rig them in a like makeshift haunted house for her before killing her. Do you not think that belies any intent on his part that he really, really fucking enjoys what he's doing to this woman?
Yeah, and I feel as though it also overlooks the stated in-universe reason for why he murders in the first place. Because if I recall, he killed one of his sisters as a child. Then he was institutionalized, but then he became fixated on repeating that murder again, which is why he goes after Lori and just fixates on other people being sisters, his sister figure, right?
Kind of, yeah. But like that's like one of his motivations because like he scrolls that on the asylum wall, right? That like he had a sister, right? But like the thing with him is that that's obviously like one of the motivations, right? But I don't think he definitively knows that Laurie is like his sister until eventually it's just like a case of what Loomis basically tells us he is just pure evil. He just likes killing, and he chooses to do it because he enjoys it. And then the sister part came more so in the second one, I think.
Halloween 2,
Like
yeah.
it was highlighted more. Yeah, but in the original, it's as simple as he escapes the psych ward. He kills the random guy for the boiler suit, and then he arrives back in Haddonfield, and he sees that Strode Realty is selling the house that his family used to live in, and he sees Laurie, and he's like, all right, that's who I'm killing because that's the first person I saw because I was gonna go back to my house.
Yep.
And then he goes out of his way. And again, what Anne seems to be ignoring here, he goes out of his way to horrifically, like, kill all of her friends before killing her, and like literally jerry rigs them in a haunted house experience. Like he's really clearly enjoying what he's doing.
Oh yeah. Anyway.
Catharsis, no release, no end goal. He just does awful things and takes up space.
You just said that Michael's getting no catharsis out of this when we just proved he is.
Yeah, like how could you? Again, have you seen Halloween recently? Because again, I'm sorry to keep hammering this, but he jerry rigs up a haunted house with her best friend's corpses.
Yeah.
Like,
if that doesn't scream I'm fucking with you, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I'm
like,
fucking with you.
does he have to write it on the walls with their blood, Ant?
Yeah. this is part of the reason like why I really like Halloween. As like I genuinely think Halloween is an excellent movie as compared to something like Friday the 13th, which is more of a popcorn muncher, right? Because Halloween is more subtle. Michael Myers isn't walking around like Freddy swearing every 2 seconds. He's just a very cold, calculating guy who really likes killing, and he's
Mhm.
like the body count in Halloween 1 is pretty low. It's like 3 people, but
Mhm.
every single one of them is memorable because he goes out of his way. Oh, actually, another one. Here's another example. So that scene where he stabs the guy and then stares at him. So that's before he kills his girlfriend who's in bed, and he shows up disguised as a ghost before strangling her,
Mhm.
like pretending to be the boyfriend.
Yeah.
He's fucking with them because it's fun for him. It's fun
Mhm.
for them to like terrorize them before he kills them. He likes
Yeah.
it. It's clearly cathartic for him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing those things. Just because it isn't explicitly stated, where Michael Myers says, "Oh, gee, boy, I just really like murdering people," doesn't mean that it's not obvious he does.
Yeah. Anyway.
Michael Myers is fascinating because he exists as a dark counterpoint to humanity, with our need for things to make sense. Myers makes no sense. He's not necessarily chaos, he's just evil. But if they were to say, be 1,000 Michael Myers walking around in Halloween, it would be dull.
Why?
Myers is fascinating.
Why? I mean, that would
because
make for a
he's
good,
singular.
interesting concept.
Mhm. Yeah.
Isn't the Purge kind of based around that concept of people just deciding to become killers during
Yeah, a little
a
bit.
legal day of no crimes?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Even though realistically they would all become looters, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
besides the point.
yeah. Not
Uh,
defending not defending the
Purge, but
execution.
yeah,
The premise is
no, yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
of course. It's like a case of again, like if Michael Myers had multiple people who are like, if it was just like a case of there are people who are born like Michael Myers every so often, um, or like with that predisposition, or like there's a culture of people who like Michael Myers just venerate the kind of like the Ball cultists in Baldur's Gate, right? Like they're just a group of people who venerate murder. Is that bad? Like, what is the non-compelling element of them?
Yeah. Like a closest example I can think of something like that would be like the entire Hutt species from Star Wars. Damn near every fucking Hutt in Star Wars is a crime
Yeah.
boss or criminal to some extent. You know, of course you got Jabba, of course, but you also got lesser known Hutts like oh, the hell was his name? The dude who wanted to build his own little mini Death Star called the Dark Saber. I can't remember his name. That you got that guy. And you also got like a ton of Hudson Swotor, like Nemro. I think, yeah, like Nemro's pretty memorable. Yeah, you get it's like every Hut's a crime lord. So okay, so let's take Anti here. So fine, Jabba by his lonesome is interesting. Does that make every other Hut just not? Like you can argue that every Hut is just a Jabba ripoff after that, but it's like, bro, it's been established that that's Hutty's culture pretty much. It's like,
Yeah, and
yeah.
like per his definition, is it not like what you just laid out is fantastic because like per his own definition, is it not inherently interesting why so many Hutts consciously make that choice to participate in that culture,
Mhm.
or why that culture is that way? It could be any number of reasons. Again, for an example that I'm pretty sure he's actually played in like a game that came out recently, like Baldur's Gate 3, the Death Cult of Baal in that
Mhm.
game. So Orin the Red works fine in isolation to him, I guess, and then the rest of the Baal cultists don't. Like the
Probably.
whole compelling thing about them is like they're a cult of murder. That's the idea, and like
Mhm.
the sort of the sort of individuals, the entire like well, in every Baldur's Gate you're a ball spawn, right? Canonically, but like in that game, because of the more visual theatrical nature of it, it places a lot of focus on the concept of the product of such a culture. So like why why is that not interesting? I guess he would have to say they're not interesting, right? Because I guess they're a I guess he would say they're not a race, but like they're basically close enough. They're an organized group of people who we've already discounted biology, right? So they'd have to qualify. Like I
Anyway,
don't. Yeah.
So on that note, let's stop talking about individual villains and start talking about villainous races and species.
here we go.
I'm telling you,
Okay.
there's something moving and it ain't us.
Now, before we get into the weeds here, we need to ask, how do we define evil races? Well, I found there are two categories
God.
based on my discussions. races that are perceived as evil, and races that are truly evil. Now, to reiterate, I find races that are pure evil to be pretty boring, but races that
Why?
are perceived as evil are incredibly fascinating. Now, you might wonder
Why?
what's the difference, but trust me, there's a
Also, Baldur's Gate 3 is not a good example for that because despite the fact the game tries to have a freaking don't prejudge people just because they're part of a specific race. Like he just showed Karlak there. It's like, oh yeah, Karlak is a tiefling, and tieflings
Tiefling,
are
yeah.
typically evil, but Karlak isn't. That's not a good game because despite that, every fucking mind flayer is still evil in that
Yeah,
game.
he completely. This is a common comprehension miss on Baldur's Gate 3.
Hmm.
Baldur's Gate 3 makes a very mind flayers are the perfect point in that because it makes a very clear point about how being a mind flayer corrupts you into being something soulless.
Yes.
Which is why, like, the Emperor, in spite of the fact that he initially appears to be favorable towards you, you eventually uncover that his motivations are purely fueled by self-preservation. He will do anything to survive. That is because that is how mind flayers are coded, right? Like
Hmm.
that is their driving impetus, essentially.
Yes.
And so, if you intend to become a mind flayer at the end, that's why there's like a commendational ending from Withers, like like Jagal, the god of death, after you kill yourself, where he basically says that you managed to surpass the mind flayer programming and you made the ultimate sacrifice, because you know, even though you turned into a mind flayer, you retained enough of yourself to make that choice. So yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is not a good example. There's plenty of people in Baldur's Gate who are evil for the sake of being evil.
Yeah.
Again, Ball cultists, all of the Dead 3 cultists, just evil, right? They
Yeah.
worship evil. They are evil cultures.
Mhm.
Cazador is pure evil. Um, there's many examples. Like this is a miss. You need to go with something different.
Yeah.
big difference. A truly evil race is just evil on a genetic level. You're born vile, you die vile. You can't ever change, that's it, end of story. But a
All right,
perceived evil army
Ant,
is
Ant, my boy. You told me earlier that these don't qualify.
Yes.
All right, you need to make up your fucking mind.
Mhm.
Doesn't like because if you're born that way, you don't have a choice. Therefore, by your own definition of evil, you cannot be even considered evil.
Yes.
You're fucking up. Why did you define evil that way if this is what you believe? In that case, just say, um, I guess obstacles are boring because that's effectively what these things boil down to.
Mhm.
But yeah, sorry, per your own definition, if it's born with a genome and it does not get a choice because we don't get a choice to be born, then yeah, sorry, it fails. It's not evil anymore. You need to stop bringing them up. All right, you
Mhm.
gotta move on to something else.
often
Like,
seen as evil by the heroic faction, who might have legitimate reasons to dislike the enemy. We've seen stories where the society from which the protagonists come from have ran a hate campaign against a demographic in order to maintain power. There are situations where a certain species or culture might just come across as evil because they're an existential threat to our protagonist's survival. And in cases like these, the only solution is to fight or run. Often, these perceived evil races are only evil for specific reasons. They're territorial animals, and you're in their territory. They're hungry, and they need food. Or they're functioning on a level we as people just can't comprehend, with moral considerations
again,
beyond.
sorry, pause really quickly. If it's a territory, again, I'm not a biologist or a zoologist, but if it's a territorial animal and it's known that it has that predisposition, then it's not making the choice to be territorial if it's in its nature to be so. So again, not evil. Why would you lay out a definition if you're not going to adhere to it, you fucking idiot? Like, it's. Why would you tell me what you think evil is and then change your mind on it 3 times?
Oh my god. I
Like,
just I just chalk it up to Ant being a leftoid. He's only in favor of it when it fits him at a given moment. That's why he keeps dropping the definition and then picking it back up again. Because it's like
yeah,
because he knows that there are just some that because he knows that there are parts in this video that will ultimately ruin his whole argument, and that's why he keeps picking up and dropping it.
It's like a case of he has a challenge here, which is to define evil in a way that is broadly agreeable, which for most people understand is contingent on the moral choice, right? And the choice not to be moral being taken. And then also he has to disagree with the concept of evil races being interesting because there's an underlying thing that he believes that in his brain prevents that from processing, right? So like it's just you need to figure this one out before you talk about it more.
Yeah.
Because per your own definition, you're calling things evil that cannot possibly meet your standard for evil. Or you need to rethink your standard, right? And you need to go into the much more disagreeable, idea that evil can be a biologically essential trait, which I don't agree with. Most people don't agree with, but that's the standard you're going to have to take if you want to make this argument. And you don't want to take that standard because that itself is objectionable to you. So just figure it out, dude. I don't know. Yeah.
Anyway.
It's
beyond our understanding.
weird.
For the first example, think the bugs from Starship Troopers. We put bases on the planets they infested, and now
I'm from
we're
Buenos
a threat
Aires,
to
and I say kill them all.
Yeah. Oh my god,
Fucking
and this
love
is
that.
not a good choice because the Starship Troopers movie is very inaccurate to the novel. You're getting a very askew portrayal of these guys. I haven't
To say
even read
nothing within.
I haven't read the book, nor have I seen the movie, and even I know that this movie got the bugs wrong. Anyway.
As someone
Funny
who
thing
has
is,
read the book, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, the funny thing is, even if you watch the movie as is, the bugs still aren't sympathetic, at least to
Yes.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
they struck first objectively.
Yep.
In both the novel and the movie. So yeah, it's...
a fascist government takes over Earth.
Oh my god, you guys want to explain how they're not fascist?
It's just they aren't
They're
though.
not.
They like literally the only difference between the mobile infantry as portrayed in this, they're specifically a military branch. So already you're in a case where the entire movie is viewed through a strictly military lens, right?
Yes.
Secondly, the line in the novel and the granted in the movie it's explained through the military lens more so than the other aspects. But the line is service guarantees citizenship. That means service to the country. And in the way it works is the difference between citizens and non-citizens is citizens get to vote. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong with this, Jack, it's been a bit since I've seen it. I know it's the case in the book, but in the movie, both of Rico's parents are not citizens, right? But they still do well for themselves. Because you can do well for yourself as a non-citizen in the society. It's still meritocratic, but if you want to be able to vote, you need to have skin in the game. Is the argument essentially that the commander and the school teacher explains at the start, right? Like something
Yeah.
given has value, so you don't value your right to vote unless you've earned it. Hence, there's a thing put in place that you have to earn it. Same in the book. So
Right.
and that's kind of Highline's whole philosophy on the matter. It's an interesting, thing. It probes a lot of discussion. It's not fascist. Fascism is something completely different.
Yeah. I thought the author was a self-described libertarian or something, but I could be wrong.
Heinlein is often called a libertarian. I know that.
Yeah, like Heinlein's personal politics shifted a lot. I understand but like the consensus was, yeah, he was very pro meritocracy and pro like individual achievement, or like facilitating individual achievement, right? Which is quite libertarian. But the point being, fascism means something completely different. Fascism, per the definition of Benito Mussolini, at least to my understanding, essentially means that there is complete, total internal control of the state through everything, and it often comports with it a ethno-nationalist quality as well. So that means I don't think it necessarily actually has to. It's a
I
bit
don't think it
nebulous
necessarily has to be, no.
because it depends. This is the thing with the
It just
fascism is also a
usually
difficult
is.
one. Yeah, fascism is a difficult in of itself because it was around for such a short period of time. It was spawned so quickly, it died even faster, as like a major political, movement. And then the sample size we have for fascist countries is exceptionally small in terms of ideologies. Like, it's obviously like Italy. I think Chile would qualify. And then you have obviously Nazi Germany, right? But even Nazism was a different ideology from fascism, right? It was like a next tier up. it spawned off of it more so than actually being pure fascism. So again, this is very complicated. I don't think you can call something fascist on the basis that they have an extremely rigid military discipline protocol and
Yes.
they take on like a warlike approach, right?
Well, Ant
Like
is
that
one of
would,
them leftoids who are like, huh, this is a pretty militaristic society. Must be
yeah.
fascist.
If you wanted to go as far as you could conceivably go, you could possibly call them imperialist or jingoist would be more appropriate, but that does not mean they are fascists. These are
No.
different things. You need to
No.
learn what the words mean that you use. I'm sorry.
Ugh.
To help combat the bugs, and they lose a lot. Whenever something bad happens, like the asteroid strike that wipes out Buenos Aires, the fascists blame the bugs. Now, when I first watched the movie, I was a little confused by the Buenos Aires asteroid strike scene. I mean, how did it happen? We see that the bugs can launch projectiles into the stratosphere, but across the galaxy, how could they launch an asteroid across the galaxy? I was a child, by the way, when I saw this movie. It took a little while for it to click.
Pause
Obviously.
a second. This is the all right. This is the updated NPC anti Starship Trooper argument. All right, they
Mhm.
did not have access to this in the previous 2010 through 2000 and I think 22 is the first I started seeing this patch. But
Mhm.
they've updated their hardware now. So yeah, no, the bugs absolutely did nuke Buenos Aires.
Yes.
That is correct. They did do that though. Whether or not you think it's logical you could chalk that up to a plot hole. Fully confess I have not seen the movie recently enough to remember. Jack, do you remember at all how they actually did it? But I know there is an explanation in the movie.
I'm sorry, can you repeat
However
that?
loose it may be. How did they destroy Buenos Aires and Starship Troopers? The bugs. I can't. I don't know exactly what the justification is.
I remember a core part of it was capturing the queen, and then they extract it of information. It's a
Yeah.
bit fuzzy, admittedly.
Give me a sec. How did bugs destroy Buenos Aires? There you go. The Federation then claimed that the Arachnid launched a bug meteor using bug plasma from the Klendathu system towards Earth and destroyed the city of Buenos Aires. Da, 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 da. So, the bugs have spacefaring since they have colonized other planets in the quarantine zone, so they're already also colonizing other planets. So that's just on top of that. Although we do not know the mechanism by which the bugs transport the meteors completely across the galaxy, it's not impossible that they do. There is no evidence also that Buenos Aires have actually targeted a meteor of any reasonable size would cause significant damage on Earth. If it hits, it was chosen as its Rico's home city. There is no reason either way that this was a false flag operation, so we can't prove it was or it wasn't. Uh, yeah. Okay. So again, the movie doesn't explain that it was. It doesn't explain that it wasn't. We also know that the bugs are already colonizing other planets, so there's no really a reason to disbelieve the fact that they did. And I equally we don't have any proof. At this point, we're in interpretation territory. I'd say the movie makes a pretty good point at the end as well. That yeah, like Jack said with the Queen, that the bugs definitely have intent towards destroying humanity because they're already destroying other planets. But like in any case, uh, yeah, this is not a. Oh yeah, no, here it is. Yeah, they. Uh, So they launched a meteorite, and so we basically see them launching other meteorites in the movie as well. So that's a good point. Like you would have to be pretty ignorant to everything the movie tells you to believe this is the long and short of it.
Yeah.
Like there's to say nothing of the fact again they're a colonial empire, so you're just choosing to believe that the bugs didn't do it. I guess,
Yeah.
which I guess you can, but it's just weird. Like Whatever, man. All right, you know what? Fair. And
Yeah.
hey, sorry, man. I guess you can believe it, but because there's not explicit proof otherwise, but there's also not explicit proof that it is the case, which just means that you're choosing to believe that that's the case. Sorry, fair enough.
Anyway.
The bugs didn't launch the asteroid. It just
did,
happened.
though.
And humanity
No.
wanted to use the tragedy to fuel their machine of war. The bugs are evil from our perspective, but at the end of the day, they're no more evil than hornets or wasps. Dangerous undeniably, but they probably wouldn't harm you if you didn't trample on their nests. Then there's the hungry race. The hungry boys who just want to eat, and we're on the menu. Killer Clowns from Outer Space is just about a bunch of silly guys on a road trip who make a pit stop for some grub. And we're the grub. Obviously, humanity sees them as evil, and there's no negotiating with these guys. But the clowns see us as dinner and a show. Obviously, you gotta fight them because they're not gonna stop, but they're not evil so much as hungry. But
but the clowns in that movie do actively pretty maliciously kill the people in there. So if it really was
Yeah.
as simple, it's like, oh, these guys are food. Well, like, why go out of their way to basically kill humanity in such comically taunting ways? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
no, they are pretty
even
evil.
even when we butcher animals, we still try we still
You still
try
try
to
to
do
do
it
it in a pretty humane way. Yeah.
Aha, I fucking knew it. Sorry, I was stuck on the Starship Troopers thing because it was burning in my brain because I remembered there was an explanation for it. I looked up the scene. There's an asteroid that hits hits the ship, and knocks out a communication tower that is similar to the one that hits Earth. So
Mhm.
yes, the
Bugs
movie
launch
does tell us.
All right.
So
Good.
I'm correct. Fuck you, and I knew that was the reason.
Fuck you,
I just
Ant.
didn't know the I just didn't know the exact one, but yes, the movie very explicitly shows us the capability of bugs to launch asteroids of that type and size.
Yeah. Anyway, Jan, what do you make of this friggin' Starship Troopers point he's making right here? I'm sorry, not this Killer Clown's point. What do you make of that?
It's more stupid. Like, can you replay it one more time? Sorry,
Alright, alright.
I was busy.
Hold on,
I was
hold
busy
on.
with Starship
Hello,
Troopers.
everybody. We have to account for Simple Jan here.
it's just about a bunch of silly
sorry.
guys on a road trip who make a pit stop for some grub. And we're the grub. Obviously, humanity sees them as evil, and there's no negotiating with these guys. But the clowns see us as dinner and
Okay, I like super don't care about that perspective though. Like,
Yes.
they are trying to kill us.
Yes.
Like,
How about we
I-
care
I-
about
like,
our
it-
own perspective here, and how
Well,
about we
it's-
care
it-
about not fucking dying?
This is the third way you're fucking yourself. So again, first of all, not evil, because per your definition, not evil. They have a biological need to eat, and they just happen to have landed here. So their biological impetus to survive directs them to eat us.
Yes.
We don't know that they're intentionally choosing to eat humans for any malicious reason in favor of other dietary options. So it could be that they literally can only subsist off human flesh.
Mhm.
And then, more importantly, though, this is the very fundamental thing. All right, I actually don't have to care about the motivation of something that is trying to do me harm. Like, if all these guys can do is eat us, and they want to eat us, and we don't want to be eaten, then that's we're at an impasse, right? One of us is
Mhm.
gonna have to go, right? That's
Yeah.
That's what we call in the business an irreconcilable difference. Like,
Yes.
Yeah, and let me know if I'm overthinking this, but do you think Ant's point here unintentionally is saying it's someone you can only call someone evil if they're the losers? If you eat everyone, then you can't be evil because the people who would call you evil are all dead.
are no
Oh,
longer are all dead.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I don't know.
but do
It's
you,
just like well, it's like his point is they're not evil from their perspective. It's like, okay, but like why? Again, sorry, just to address briefly what you were saying. Yeah, no, I think that if and like that's an interesting question. Like, and if they ate all of humanity, and there's no one left to consider them evil, are they? Like, can you be evil in
exactly.
a vacuum? Like, what about the desire to do? I guess because per his earlier definition, he would agree, right? Because like you can still desire to do malice, even in absence of any ability to actually do it, right?
Yeah.
But like these guys, I just what do we? what do I care that they, that their motivation is not directly malicious? They are
Yeah.
causing me harm.
And like I just said, they're killing us in pretty malicious ways. If it was just as simple, it's like, oh, they gotta eat us. It's like, why are they going out of their ways to kill us in such comical fashion that they laugh at? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that would of course be the argument in favor that this is not just like a biological need of they can only subsist of human flesh. They choose to eat us because that could be, like, conversely, if this would fall into his this is what I mean, all right? He has fucked himself on so many levels here.
Yes.
So, first of all, first level of fuckery, if you believe this is a biologically essential predisposition they have, you've already agreed it can't be evil because there's no intent. Second of all, if there is intent, you are now in violation of your earlier segment because that means that there are multiple clowns that are acting this way as a species that have that biological trait, and you still find that compelling on the grounds that they aren't evil from like fucking their own perspective or something, whatever the fuck that means. But in any case, so you agree that it is possible for a group of evil creatures to be compelling in this specific instance. So I don't know why we bothered exploring the individual prior to this when we now know that it's possible to be evil as a group. So
Mhm.
yeah, good job on that
Yeah,
one.
so
Uh,
yeah, so
Go
according to
ass.
him, yeah, yeah, so according to him, all those groups he listed off at the start, there's no there, his issues with them are completely moot because
Yes.
they don't,
yeah.
from their interpretation, they're not evil, so
Well,
therefore, who cares?
his entire ability to recover this now hinges on how he is able to define a species that, or like a group that, one. So in order to find something that even qualifies for the subject matter of his video, per the rules he laid out, you would have to find something that is evil, not for biological reasons. It is also not a unique individual that is one of a kind,
Mhm.
because that was an automatic fail per the previous section. Now, per this section, we're discovering that if there is an underlying purpose for them being evil, they even fail. So,
Yes.
and this can be a purely malicious one, as in the case of these clown boys who just kind of eat you because they like,
Little clown boys.
they're like they like eating and they want to eat us, and they can even go about it in malicious ways, provided that that is just like their driving motivation. Like, as long as evil of a group of people who are evil have a core underlying motivation, they cannot be considered evil.
Mhm.
So I'm really fucking curious about the exactly 3 things that you could possibly conceive of that meet all of those criteria are. But are they
It's
really a sufficient problem that we need to be having a conversation about them?
yes.
like, the fucking the 3 Glumbo creatures who just like evil, I guess, but not for like.
Globos.
Hello, my name is Glumbo. I am evil, but I am not evil. Be not mistaken. I am not evil because I have a genetic reason to be evil. That is not true. I am choosing to be evil. I am also not a unique individual. I have a group of other Glumbai here who are we're all in a big old faction that we call a race because we can't be a culture or a society or else we'd fail as well. So we call ourselves a race. Equally, however, be not mistaken. We do not have any underlying purpose for our evil. We, in fact, choose to be evil because we really like evil. Although you might consider that an underlying purpose, that is not sufficient. So now we qualify.
Ah!
What the fuck? Like, how many fucking things like this even exist? Like,
Ah!
what are we talking about?
Ah!
Who are we talking about?
Ah! We gotta keep going. We gotta keep going here. We gotta keep going here. We gotta keep going. We gotta keep going.
In a show. Obviously, you gotta fight them because they're not gonna stop, but they're not evil so much as hungry.
Oh god, I'm seeing
But a more interesting
stars.
example would be the xenomorphs.
Oh no, not these guys. These guys will fuck your argument even more.
Oh my
Alien.
god. Oh my
Ugh.
god. No.
The
Okay, what's the
xenomorphs are
motivation?
just animals enacting their life cycle. They're feeding, procreating, doing things animals do. The only problem is they're doing it to humanity. And what makes the aliens so terrifying...
Wait, one more to the list, So Glumbo also can't be an animal. I'm just
Oh
keep track of all of these.
god.
Sorry. I'm opening up. I'm keeping a notepad of all the things Glumbo can't be. I'm gonna reveal it at the end of a video just to find
Oh,
out what
this will be
Glumbo
good.
can
This will
be.
be good. This will be good.
Is their otherworldly nature and perfect design. They leave people violated and abused, but at the end of the day, they're doing it to survive.
You violated me, Xenomorphs. You violated me.
It's nothing
A
personnel,
xenomorph
kid.
Yes.
Xenomorph,
It's
probably.
not personal, kid.
hatching inside a person is horrific, but then again, it's not like parasites don't do that already.
So what?
Yeah, I don't. I don't understand. Yeah, no, but like, this is the thing. You don't need to be belaboring this point. You've already made the case that if there's an underlying genetic factor, which of course everything has a genetic need to consume, material, as far as we
Yeah.
understand, then they do not qualify as evil. You're you're being you're being redundant here. You've already
Yes.
clarified this.
Yes. Way to
There's
go.
no point in having
Way to go.
there's like no point in having this beyond just adding qualifiers because you feel the need to justify these certain bad guys you enjoy.
Ah.
But
Animals
yeah,
breed,
it's
eat, and
very
defend.
weird.
Breed, eat, and defend their territory. That's just what they are, and that's just what the xenomorphs do.
You know, Burke, I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them fucking each other over for a goddamn percentage.
Now, the third example comes from things beyond our rational
Oh boy,
understanding.
here we go.
Their actions inflict harm, undeniably. People see them as evil, but from their perspectives, it's just hard to fathom what they're thinking. If evil is intent, and we can't really engage with that intent, then it makes us question the bedrock of our and their morality.
Okay, so Jan,
Essentially,
another one
Yeah.
for Glorbo. You have to make sure that his motivations are incomprehensible.
The Glombos. Yes.
They need to be comprehensible. Yeah,
They need to be
comprehensive.
their reasons need to be incomprehensible. Yes. Ugh.
It's just like, wait, didn't he? Wait. I'm so fucking
Weren't you
sorry. Didn't he
banging
call
on earlier that like we should understand their motivations?
Wait, no, but he specifically said Michael Myers' motivation is incomprehensible. So
Yeah.
how can he be evil? I fucking get it.
Oh my god. Oh my
Also,
god.
by the way, just so we're very clear, you can inverse these arguments to those individuals we were talking about, and like, how is Michael Myers evil? He's just having a grand old time. Is that so
Yeah.
bad? From his
He's
perspective,
having
he
a
isn't
ball.
evil. Like,
Anyway.
from his perspective, the Jedi are evil. Like,
Oh god. Ugh.
Actually, this is where things that are too weird for our morality go. Calling them evil is reductive, considering what they have going on. Now, on TV tropes, they call this a blue and orange morality. For a distinction on the alien versus moral, consider Lovecraft's mythos versus August Derleth's rewrite of the mythos. Lovecraft isn't exactly a flawless writer. And again, we're not going to go into racism today.
Of course, he had to bring up the fact that Lovecraft hated fucking black people and Jews.
What-
Of course,
what-
it's like no, Aunt. We know. We don't care. He's
I just-
dead.
I
We'd
thought-
like his
I thought he
books.
wasn't
Move
gonna-
on.
I thought he wasn't going to bring up race. Didn't he say
Yeah.
that at the start?
Yeah. What the fuck, Aunt? What the fuck?
I just want to be clear. H.P. Lovecraft, as someone who has studied him, he was into ranked competitive racism. Anyone who wasn't a pure-blooded Anglo wasn't good enough for him. All right.
Yeah.
Like in a sense, you could say he was the least racist man alive because he fucking hated everyone. He was an equal opportunity hater.
Yes. Yes.
But it's just like to seriously address the point here. It's just because this is becoming belabored. Like, do we really need to understand H.P. Lovecraft and whoever the fuck other dead person was he showed on screen in order to understand the idea of evil?
The guy who basically wrote he's the guy who basically wrote a bunch of other Lovecraft material set in Lovecraft's world, but he's really divisive because he basically made the Cthulhu's like a more standard black versus white sort of thing. And no, I don't mean the race.
Okay.
I mean like in terms of like good versus evil. So yeah.
Morality.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, like in any case, why do we need to understand these two to understand a point that has already, if anything, been tiredly drawn out of you don't consider it evil so long as there is an underlying motivation. Like or like an underlying non-morally like non-morally contingent motivation, right? Like an essential need that drives the evil, right? Is what I would dilute the section down to. You've
Yeah.
already made that point several times over, poorly, but yeah, we all get it. We're following what you're saying. It's just not making a lot of sense with itself. But yeah,
Yes.
you don't need to fucking go into H.P. Lovecraft. That's fine.
Because that
Like,
deserves its own focus. Lovecraft was extremely racist, but he did establish the great old ones.
How about let's not, because it's a tired out fucking argument. Please, we get it. How about you move on from it, for fuck's sake?
older gods is essentially
just get over it. He's dead. It's fine.
Yes.
You'll survive.
Is Lovecraft in the room with you right now, Ant? Anyway.
beyond our
His cat might
understanding.
be.
To them, we're ants, or less. And are we evil if we step on an anthill by accident, not noticing it? Now, Derelith, meanwhile,
This guy.
after Lovecraft's passing, he was really responsible for keeping Lovecraft alive into the rest of the 20th century. He reinvented the Great Old Ones in his stories to be engaged in a battle of good and evil, like old gods.
Yeah.
And it's so boring.
Why?
It loses the appeal of these otherworldly intelligences that are beyond the scope of our comprehension. And these entities, yeah, they're often horrific and do not have our best intentions at heart, but they're so beyond good and evil that to anchor them to these terms limits the sheer horror on display. And this isn't a Lovecraftian apology video. This is just saying that they're so
And I don't expect you to be a fucking Lovecraft
Hey.
apologist, given how far left you are.
I don't understand the it's so he just said categorically he pitted them in like the idea that there's a good versus evil narrative.
Yes.
But like, so why is that inherently less compelling? We don't even know that they are one-dimensional.
I mean, the
In that
Sith,
context.
the Jedi versus the Sith, that's a one-dimensionally good versus evil narrative, yet it's literally the main narrative of Star Wars. It's literally the only conflict that spans all the fucking eras of Star Wars. You want to say that
Yeah,
the
like-
Jedi versus Sith are boring? Come on.
Yeah, like if I was to give him the best faith possible olive branch, I suppose what he's saying is in order to have that sort of narrative structure, you would necessarily have to dilute the great old ones down to being like having motivations that are comprehensible. But then per your earlier section on individuals, which the great old ones are necessarily individuals, based on scope and presentation, they can still be fine, right?
Yeah.
So like this is an established rule. Your quibble here, if at all, is with the specific writer and like how he wrote them. But by your own rules, it's already theoretically possible that it could have been done well, provided they were checks notes, unique individuals, non-genetic, and like non-racial.
Yeah.
So like if Cthulhu had a story about him and like exploring some of his motivations and he was hammy and entertaining enough, or like I guess in his position more like awe-inspiring and malevolent,
Yeah.
you could still find it engaging per your own terms. So this is just an isolated. You're not establishing a general trend. You're taking umbrage with a particular writer. These are not the same.
Yeah.
calling them evil reduces them. And that's not going to be the last time I say that either. But honestly, machines kind of count in this category too. Because a machine is just there to do a function. It has one job, and that's it.
Strength is irrelevant. Resistance is futile. Then down came the claw. And that? Love. Was that?
When people think of evil races, demons are one of the first to come to mind. In part because some people actually believe demons exist. The thing about demons is, often they're incredibly cool looking. But more of them isn't necessarily better. You see one demon in a movie, book, film, game, and you're in for a world of terror. You see hundreds, and you're actually gonna be fine, probably. It's weird. Look at the Evil Dead series. Army of Darkness ends with thousands of deadites.
What about different tiers of demons, though? That's like there's like this is again. There's like there's the big Chungus demon, and there's the little foot soldier demons, right?
Yes.
Like to to use the again going to Baldur's Gate 3 because it's a video game medium as well, and there's the fucking introductory critters section. Raphael being an extremely powerful like devil, right, doesn't discount the fact that there are like his terror isn't lessened for the presence of other devils in the story.
Yes.
Or like it's a case of he's using them as underlings. Oh, okay, like technically he's a Cambion, right? So he's like a very specific type of devil, even.
Yes.
So it's a case, but there are other Cambions who aren't as powerful as Raphael. So the menace of Raphael lies in how clearly more powerful he is, and in a sense, having other lesser Cambions that you dispatch before Raphael even introduces himself is, well, you can arguably kill one of, like, Zulk at the start as well, and you've seen other Cambions and imps and all the other sorts of little devils, adds to the menace of Raphael because he's more powerful than even them, right? Same section when he's when you first fight the aura, the guy with the crossbow. I can't remember his name specifically. But Raphael gives you a big old speech about how scary he is. So it's like, oh shit, Raphael even is kind of
It's
afraid
like,
of this
oh
guy.
shit,
And I know
here
Raphael
comes a badass.
Yeah, it's like Raphael is scared of this guy, and I know Raphael is strong because he's stronger than all of these other demons that I've seen, right? So, like, in a sense, they are introducing. This is what I mean by that. They can be useful narrative tools. They are introducing scale, much the same as, like, conversely in Devil May Cry. The little envy demons aren't as strong as Virgil, so it adds to the menace of Virgil with the ease that he is able to dispatch them, right? So, like, they have a purpose still.
Yeah.
It's just not main bad guy material, right? But yeah.
Raiding a castle, but Ash and company just plow through them without a care in the world. But in the previous Evil Dead movies, Ash was getting his ass beat by singular demonic threats.
Yeah, because Ash in the first movie wasn't as experienced as he was in the second.
Yeah, this is such a weird. Again, this is just a basic narrative arc, right? Like he was really bad at killing demons to start, and then he became really good at killing demons. Because like, it's also like a stylistic presentation different. But like Ash isn't Dante from Devil May Cry to start. He isn't a half demon that's like superhuman.
No.
And capable of shrugging off like any wound, right? So it's like, yeah, that's part of it. The part of the narrative of the through line for Evil Dead is obviously him becoming, like it's about Ash becoming more experienced at this because that's a skill set he lacked. Dante has the skill set, but he doesn't have the skill set to defeat the singular, very powerful devil, which is Virgil, right? So his evolution is in that capacity, but also it's a weird comparison because like he alluded to Devil May Cry. It's a video game whose conceptual focus is on style and being able to dispatch enemies, in a stylish fashion, versus the individual fights being more complex, right?
Yeah.
So that's just a weird focus, but yeah.
One at a
Ash
time.
just got better. It's fine.
And those guys, they can be kind of scary when they're not making you laugh. They're a great force of evil. No complaints, no notes in any of the Evil Dead films. But I think one of the best demons in media is one we don't see. When people talk about The Exorcist, they don't talk about Pazuzu. They talk about Reagan. The demon isn't inherently interesting, but the harm the demon inflicts is. And that carries everyone throughout the film. And honestly, I'm kind of underselling Pazuzu here, because he's actually kind of interesting. He's a petty little bitch. Father Merrin exorcised him out of someone from Africa. It depends on which film you're watching. The films keep giving us different candidates for this, seriously. So when Father Merrin comes back in the original Exorcist to exorcise Pazuzu again, Pazuzu just kills him. When Karis eventually frees Reagan from Pazuzu, the petty little bitch puts the soul of a condemned serial...
Why are we talking about this? This is such a... It's just burning time. You've made your point. Your point is they can be like individual high stakes combat with individual demon makes that individual demon more scary than like a horde of lesser demons you just plow through. Obviously, that doesn't mean both don't serve a function. The when Ash is fighting an individual demon and struggling for his life, it's obviously evoking, terror and trying to build up how dangerous that creature actually is. When he's plowing through an army of demons, it's showing off, number one, his growth, and number two is just, it's like a payoff for a big epic battle at the end with lots of enemies, lots of combat happening, lots of set pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which can both be engaging. These both have a narrative purpose. I don't know why you're justifying this and why we need to discuss fucking Exorcist lore to understand this. It's so off topic, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just so not the subject. Why are we talking about it? This is the video essay special.
I don't know. Maybe Ant really wants to make an Exorcist video, but he doesn't have enough like material to make it, so he has to wrap it up in this video.
It's like it's the Ant classic. It's I'm gonna evoke that I understand this movie by describing the plot of it to you.
Yeah.
You know what? My cousin could do that on Wikipedia. Like it's not.
And he,
We don't need.
I could do that with Wikipedia, and I don't even need to see the damn movies. Ugh.
Yeah, like I don't. This is such a off-topic tangent. It's
Mhm.
ridiculous.
Yes.
It's like the third one too. It's the same as the H.P. Lovecraft shit.
Yep. Anyway.
Serial killer into Karras' body just to torment him from beyond the grave. Like, Pazuzu's a great villain.
Sit here with us, Karras.
I'm glad.
Would you like
I'm
a
really
message?
glad, man. Good to know.
I see that she gets it.
A singular demon can be terrifying, especially for the unprepared. But most often,
Not demons as a whole.
It's like there are good demons, and then there are crap demons.
hordes of demons means hordes of people that can get plowed down without a care in the world. Constantine, Devil May Cry, Doom. The more demons, the more our heroes can pulverize the demons. Doom gets to the point where the legions of hell are so demoralized fighting the Doomslayer that they deify him as their boogeyman, which, I mean, it's pretty badass.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make the demons interesting as characters.
Why?
So how do you...
Pause. Ding. There you go. You found it. You found the narrative point of Doom. The narrative point of Doom is to be fucking cool and stylish
Yes.
and to have fun killing demons with a bunch of different game mechanics. The narrative complexity of the demons does not need to be a factor in order for Doom to work. To say nothing of the fact, of course, like Backseat, the question is, of course, we're asking why is that inherently uninteresting? Like the fact that the demons are conscious entities that choose to try to basically, like they can feel fear of things, they can deify them through like this. So it's like a case of that is of course inherently interesting, but like it's why does it need to be? What is uninteresting about it? And if the plot works in spite of them not being like characterized or interesting, why is that a problem?
Also, I thought we were talking about
Not-
plot here. Doom is not a plot-heavy game. Not at all.
Yeah, and like the story of Doom is very much told mainly like primarily through the gameplay vehicle, right? Where
Yes.
it's like a case of you build the story of the Doomslayer by being good at Doom and playing
Yes.
through the levels of Doom rather than exploring it through cutscenes. Like as you'd expect in like a more narrative-heavy game, like something like Heavy Rain, for example.
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Like so
Hey,
like
I'm
it's
I'm gonna sign off for a bit, but I'll try to come back after I'm done eating.
All right. See.
Okay.
All right. See you, Keto.
see you in a bit.
I think we can take. I think we could take this video with just the two of us. Just the
Yeah,
two of
this is
us.
probably
Building
should we
castles
make
in
it
the
if we
sky.
try?
make
Cheap
hordes
suck.
of demons interesting? One strategy that's had success is diversifying the demonic army. Dungeons and Dragons had the novel approach to divide demons and devils into two separate races, with demons being chaotic evil monstrosities and devils being a hierarchy of lawful evil tyrants. And those
I don't know that that's a D&D exclusive. I know it's certainly popularized the concept, but I don't know if I'd credit D&D with that idea. But that is true though. They are different like entities, and then there's Arcana lots as well, which are like or Yuga lots.
Why do I
but-
get the feeling that even if like every fiction franchise with demons, why do I get the feeling that if every fictional franchise did that, Ants still wouldn't be happy and would still call them boring bad guys, no matter how different they're made? I get the feeling Ants would
'cause,
be
like-
one of those people.
Yeah, and because like to be clear, the hierarchies in D&D for both the Abyss and the Hells are very similar. Like there's
Yeah.
extremely low level, creatures like Lumiers and Dretches respectively, and then they can work their way up the ranks to being more powerful devils and demons, right? But like
Yeah.
they are beyond their underlying like core trait of being chaotic forces of destruction and lawful forces of deception, they are almost indistinguishable.
Yeah,
Like,
like the only like real way like I can see Ant being happy with this is that like what Dragon Age does with the Fade. Like Jan, you're familiar with Dragon Age, right?
yeah, I played it once.
Okay, so in Dragon
Oh,
Age, you got the demons, they're bad guys, but you also got spirits, and they're good guys, and they both occupy the Fade, so... But even then, Ant would still say that the demons in there are boring as all hell, no matter what, but anyway.
Yeah, like, and the failure qualification seems to be just like there's enough of them, which is weird, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
hear
like...
out the D&D argument.
yeah, it's like...
Go.
it's like... I don't know, does Ant just want, like, every fucking quote-unquote evil faction just be morally gray?
I don't even
I
think
get
that
the
he wants that. I just think...
I just
Go
feel
ahead.
like I feel like he doesn't know what he wants.
Well, no,
Anyway.
I feel that what he wants exactly is to be able to say that he enjoys many classic storytelling tropes of having opposing forces of darkness, but also not have the stigma of feeling like he's justifying biological essentialism. That's what he wants, I feel. But he's tying himself into pretzels trying to figure it out.
Yes. Anyway. Moving on.
Two races have their own insular societies that follow their own structure. By doing this, it complicated devils and demons into a far more interesting and compelling hierarchy. Many would argue that the recent Baldur's Gate 3's central devil, Raphael, is a more compelling antagonist than the main villains of the game.
Would you agree with that, Jan?
It's hard to say because I think all of them are interesting. I think Ketheric is probably more memorable than Raph. It's hard to say. Ketheric is really good, almost everyone agrees with that. The issue with Orin and Gortash, at least on release, was that they both had... So the issue is the narrative phases, right? So Raphael is with you throughout. He introduces himself in Act 1. He has a presence in Act 2 and Act 3. Ketheric is introduced, he's alluded to several times, and like Moonrise Towers is alluded to several times in Act 1, and then he's like a payoff in Act 2. And then Orin and Gortash are slightly foreshadowed in the slightest of ways at the beginning in Act 1. And then they kind of both have like an act that's the shortest act in the game as well, at least level-wise, to like develop themselves, right? Now you can find a lot of information about Gortash and Orin and a lot of lore about them, so they aren't as complicated as Raphael. The game just expects you to be more on the lookout for those things rather than, straight up presenting them to you. But in and of itself, Raphael is inherently linked to Gortash because, he's the one who helped them steal the Crown of Karsus, which is the main MacGuffin of the game, and then that's also linked to Karlach. Like they're all kind of intertwined, so it's hard to say. I don't think that this is... Now, I think it's a popular opinion, but I don't know that's true. That like he's more interesting, and I will hearken again to the idea. It's so hard to be definitive about what's more or less interesting, right? Like Gortash being like trying to like spread his tyranny with like. Here's an interesting thing about Gortash. If you ally with him, like he dies no matter what because the Elder Brain fucking like fries him, right? But like he keeps his word, so that's like an interesting thing about him off the bat. It's like, oh, that kind of recontextualizes a bunch of stuff he was doing. Yeah, no, it's I don't think this is fair. I'm glad Ant likes Raphael because I like him too, but like doesn't tell me much beyond that.
Yeah.
And this is because Raphael offers a Faustian bargain to the players, and that game makes you question if the short-term results are worth Raphael's future machinations. Faustian bargains are a staple in this sort of fiction. From the original...
Pause. Okay, that part is weird. So Raphael offers you a bargain in Act 1. He doesn't honor it until Act 3. However, it is all but impossible to, like... It is basically impossible to avoid being able to, on some level, accept his bargain, or at least entertain it. So it's like it's not a case of you don't have a choice but to hear it out. And then the other aspect of the particular bargain is you have the ability to subvert it as well. So it's not like a definitive, like him offering you that bargain isn't the inherently interest. Like I don't know how that feeds into him being a devil. He could be anything. He could be. You could argue Oren offers you a similar bargain of giving you her netherstone if you kill Gortash, right, and that sort
Yeah.
of thing. But she subverts it. Like it's that's a very it's such a he's interesting because he offers you a Faustian bargain. Really? I don't.
I feel like there's a bit
I
more
just,
there. I think there should be a bit more than that. Yeah.
yeah, like I feel like you could say a lot more about Raphael. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Original story of Dr. Faustus, to Madoka, to the Twilight Zone, but one of the best examples of the Faustian bargain in recent memories is the Black Eclipse from Berserk, where, in exchange for incredible power, Griffith sacrifices the souls of his companions to the God Hand, eventually ascending to...
So that's not a Faustian bargain, just so we're clear. Griffith, a Faustian bargain, to my understanding, is defined by the notion that the devil, in many cases, or a demon or some higher power, will offer you an exchange that they know something about that you don't. So it'll fuck you over in some kind of way, right? Like in the original Dr. Faust, he will take your soul and kidnap, take him to hell. But Griffith, there is no such consequence. Griffith was given the Egg of the King, the Bailet, and then during the Black Eclipse, he had a choice to sacrifice everyone and gain power. That is precisely what happened. Griffith is exactly where he wants to be as a consequence of the Black Eclipse.
Yeah.
There was no undue. In fact, there's a chapter where he directly communicates with basically the idea of evil in Berserk, and it makes clear the terms of the bargain to him, and he assents to it. So this is not a Faustian bargain. This is not what I would call a Faustian bargain. It's just a deal. That happens to be with demonic or otherworldly entities, but there is no loss incurred beyond the direct sacrifice of his men, which he knows about and he consciously chooses to do. There is no subversion for Griffith here. He just accepts the deal because he's a psychopath. But
anyway,
reach their ranks. What Berserk does so well is that Griffith, along with several apostles throughout the series, are people who underwent a Faustian bargain and emerged the other side a twisted monster. The God Hand deals with those who are most desperate and gives them their wishes in exchange for becoming essentially servants of darkness. They're people who by default chose to commit great evil, and thus their evil feels more palpable. It's a choice. Their demonic form is merely a reflection of the awfulness buried within their souls already. The only guidelines they follow are, do as thou wilt. The apostles are creatures of total debauchery, but everything they do is their choice, and that's interesting. But if we're talking about anime demons who are truly terrifying, look no further than Freyrin.
How many examples do we need, man? I get it. Demons are fine. They work. You didn't have to justify all this.
Maybe he's all like, "Oh, I need a certain amount of I need a certain amount of time I need to hit a certain time limit for each chapter. Let's pad my video out." That's really what he's doing. He's padding his video out. Jan, I'm putting this on 1.5. Is that all right?
Just do it. Yeah, that's fine. No worries.
Fucking Christ.
When we first encounter demons in this world, they seem cordial, almost inviting. They are those among society who have forgotten the terrors of the Demon King that's beaten at the beginning of the series, due in part to their short lives relative to the titular elf. But we're told, and shown, we can never trust them, despite how sweet and inviting they might appear. Now, what's interesting about the demons in Freyrin is that they aren't exactly evil, though they are undeniably dangerous. They're predators that imitate humanity to lure us into a position where they can eradicate us properly. They're wired differently than us. They're incapable of feeling the same things, but know how to pretend they can feel. They don't even seem to understand why, say.
So, just very quickly, a reminder for everyone, if they are inherently evil and it's no choice of their own, Ant does not consider them evil per his definition. This is the 5th time this has come up. It'll probably come up a few more times, but I don't know why these are being brought up as an example at all.
Crying for one's mother elicits an emotional response. They just do that because they need to prey on humanity and need to stave off their own deaths. Now, don't get this twisted. Freywind shows us exactly what happens when humans trust demons. It ends badly. It's not good. Just because something is too alien to understand, good and evil by our human standards, it doesn't make them any less dangerous. Trusting a demon is dumb. It's as dumb as sticking your head in a bear trap. If anything, the fact that demons don't seem to understand morals makes them even more frightening and more dangerous. But it's dangerous in a way that is compelling, rather than repetitive or dull. They're kind of like what the nobodies in Kingdom Hearts sounded like before you actually started talking to the nobodies.
Ugh.
Dude, how many fucking references do we need? It's
Ugh.
so exhausting.
I bet you
like,
Andy's like, look at all these franchises I'm familiar with. It's like,
Yeah,
this is
it's
just Ant
literally,
flexing his nerd cred
it's-
here.
it's just mental masturbation. Like, dude, I get it. Yes, fucking okay. It's fine. Yes, demons are fine. You think demons are cool. It's, it's fine. Okay. What is the point of this? Like, this is so redundant with itself. It's not like and like I have no problem with long videos. Like I watch Patrician TV all the time, for
Yes.
example. Like he makes super long videos, but like this is you're belaboring a point here. It's been made. You
And
think that demons
you
are
see
fine?
what Larxene is that who this is? Larxene. And you see what Larxene is doing right here? Shush up.
He's sad.
Anyway.
He's sad.
In Kingdom Hearts. So while most demons are evil, some exist outside the binary of good and evil. But when discussing this, we always come to one inevitable point.
Oh, here we go. Here we go, boys. Oh my god. Sahara, if you're watching this one's for you, pal.
The Cenobites from Hellraiser were humans who have explored the furthest regions of experience. They're essentially BDSM monks who see pain and mutilation as the highest good. In essence, they are us if our drive for self-pleasure and self-modification was taken to extremes. Though the Cenobites appear demonic, they're just people. In a lot of ways, the Cenobites are similar to Berserk's apostles, only with one...
Not really.
No.
But like, it's already a no.
Yes.
And like, I'm gonna make I'm gonna make a prediction based on that Twitter comment and his description of them so far. He's going to argue that because they are ultimately pursuing pleasure and not, in their perspective, pain, that means that they're not evil. However, what we can see is the inevitable outcome of their choice is, mutilation, destruction, pain. So, like, they can be. This is the thing about morality. You can be incorrect about things from like a moral perspective. You can think that someone could hypothetically think that murder. Let's say there's a character, hypothetically, called Orin the Red in a game called Baldur's Gate 3, which you claim to have played, who thinks that murder is like the ultimate form of self-actualization, right?
Like Carnage
that doesn't mean
from
she's not
Marvel.
Yeah, no, exactly. Also him. Any like psychopathic murderer that thinks Michael Myers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That like thinks that murder is like the ultimate form of like pleasure. That doesn't make them. Yeah, that doesn't make them good. They're still evil. They just have a skewed understanding of good and evil, but their interpretation of morality in and of itself is what's evil, right?
Yes.
Like that's the problem.
One key difference. The Cenobites didn't become monsters for power or out of desperation. They became monsters because they were bored of their ordinary lives and sought richer pleasures. And when they came out the other side of all their journeys, all concepts of right and wrong were twisted and intertwined until human morality became meaningless. And honestly, that's fucking horrifying.
Who are you? Explorers in the further regions of experience. Demons to some, angels to others.
That's way scarier than Freyvin's demons or Raphael's seductions, because there's something so uncanny and unnatural, and yet so uncomfortably logical about Cenobites. They're not here to hurt you, they're here to help you. But their idea of help is completely counter to our own.
Well, so... Again, I don't know that you can definitively call them more compelling. What I would simply say is they are more relatable in a sense. Like than it depends obviously how far you want to go with interpretations, because like Raphael's desire for self-aggrandizement and power can be perceived as relatable, right? But like the Cenobites are very they're low to the ground in terms of their type of evil. They're basically hedonists trying to seduce other people to become hedonists.
Yes.
Which is a problem because we understand hedonism to, in excess to lead not to great places.
Is this where Ant got the idea that like, oh, it's okay if Magneto wants to freaking like kill all of humanity, or I'm sorry, it's okay if Magneto accidentally ends up killing all of humanity if he didn't mean it?
Yeah, that's
Problem.
fine. Well, yeah, no, that genuinely seems his moral paradigm is skewed very much in favor of the. It's almost selective. I want to say it's skewed more towards like the intent.
It's
Like
like it's
it
like
seems
if
to him
Ant
like
intends for good things to happen, it's okay if bad things happen if that good thing ends up coming, basically. Like
yeah.
like like if Ant, like let's say Ant wants to frickin' plant a tree and grow it. Okay, good. That's a good thing, you know? But in order to get to the frickin' nursery where all like the tree seeds are sold or whatever the hell, he has to
Like
frickin' he has to freaking drive over absolutely everyone in town, grievously break all their bones in their bodies with his car like it's GTA, then he has to go into a fucking store, rob it at gunpoint, then he shoots the owner anyway, gets the money from the cash register, then all the police in town come after him, he blows all of them up with a freaking ICBM, and then he gets to the flower store, buys the tree seeds, goes back to his house, and then waters it with the blood of all the innocents, and then the tree grows into a beautiful tree. It's like, my job is done here. Basically.
genuinely, yeah, like, and like genuinely, Ant, question: which do you think is worse? Do you think a person? So here's the hypothetical: you have a magic wizard on your shoulder, and the wizard confirms to
No, a
you that
little devil, a
individual
little
A,
angel and devil on your shoulder.
angel and devil on your shoulder, and the little angel, they both confirm to you that person A has deeply rooted thoughts and desires to hurt someone, and he wants to do harm, but he never will. Like he will never actually harm anyone, even though he really, really wants to, because there's some other inhibition preventing him, but he really wants to at all times. And there's person B who doesn't want to hurt anyone, but continually will do harm through choices that he makes, like inevitably he will. It's like the John Constantine thing, where just showing up will like cause people to suffer, right? And it's almost not his fault, but it's just because he has noble goals that he wants to pursue. He will keep showing up. He will keep trying to help, and he'll keep fucking things up. And he's aware of that fact, but he will keep trying. Which of them is worse? Are they both equally bad? Worse? Is one better? These are like very serious moral questions that I don't think you fully grappled with, given
No.
your introspections on morality.
Yes. I'm snipping this frickin' picture of Pinhead here. This is going on the thumbnail. It's like, because he's got the serious. Are you fucking serious, Ant? Look.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, it's like, are you kidding me? Anyway.
You solved the box. We came. Now you must come with us. Taste our pleasure.
They could just obliterate all humanity in a matter of seconds if they chose to, but they don't. They wait for people to find them. They only engage targets who solve their puzzle box and are drawn to souls who seek their pleasure. And this box, it's hard to find. In the second film, Dr. Chernard spends a lifetime looking for it and can't find the real thing. It's a miracle how it keeps falling into our main protagonist Christie's lap, almost as if she's drawn to hell, like so many others. But Pinhead and his Cenobites seem less interested in people who don't seek them out. They have a code of order. They seem angry when they find that Frank has escaped them. Frank is the main antagonist of the first film for those who haven't seen Hellraiser, but they're even more angry when they find he's murdered and skinned someone.
We want the man who did this.
When a young new girl, Tiffany, is manipulated into solving their puzzle in the second film, the Cenobites leave her behind. She solves the puzzle, and they don't take her, because, as Pinhead so eloquently puts it,
It is not hands that call us. It is desire.
even Kirsty, who solves the puzzle, is allowed to negotiate multiple times out of being sent to the Cenobites' labyrinth. The Cenobites might be horrific, but they have a code. They may break that code whenever they wish, but it's only their own self-restraint that keeps them adhering to that code. Except in the other
Sorry, I'll let him finish his point, then I'll go, but this is very strange.
Hellraiser films. I've only mentioned the first two here so far. In other Hellraiser films, Pinhead's goal is just to destroy humanity, and in turn the Cenobites become incredibly boring. Actually, the Pinhead and crew in the first two Hellraiser films, and some of the comics, versus the third and fourth film is a great dichotomy as to what I'm actually talking about here when I say that evil is boring in fantasy fiction. In the first two Hellraiser films, Pinhead and his crew are not the main villains. In fact, by comparison to the human villains in each, so that would be Frank, Julia, and Dr. Chenard, the Cenobites almost seem moral. They're a neutral presence that only arrive when they're summoned and perform a singular task.
Oh, this is more that, there are more evil people in this movie, so all the evil Pinhead and the Cenobites do is forgiven. It's like that same shit he pulled with Magneto and Stryker in the Magneto video. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's like a case of like it's again very classic devil style thing where ultimately while the devil is evil, he is also in a sense a punisher of evil because that is something that he enjoys, right? Like
Yes.
he enjoys inflicting torment, and it's through divine ordainment that he can only do it to those most deserving, right? That's like what the Cenobites are a play on.
Hmm.
But yeah, they are still evil. It's just through the mechanisms that constrain them, which might be above their own design, they can only harm certain people that we think deserve it.
Yeah.
But like, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, the Cenobites have no one's best interest at heart.
Yeah.
It just happens that they
It's
are
just
limited.
the other than their own, which is they want to please themselves. They want to beat it. So, yeah.
The Gooners. But then,
Yes. They're the
uh,
ultimate race of demonic gooners. Yes.
yeah. But then to address what he said of like they became less, they had less of a code and they became more boring as a result. It's like a case of, again, don't know that they became definitively less boring. What I would say that would just be inconsistent with their portrayal, right? Which
Hmm.
would be the thing that made them bad. It's like if you set up the Cenobites to be this thing and then suddenly they become this other thing, obviously that's going to be jarring, right?
Yeah.
But uh, the idea of, in isolation, the idea of a story based on how it's told of a creature that is just inherently evil and is like hunting, like dogging the main character, right, and trying
Hmm.
to get them to do something they don't want to do, that of course can be compelling.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, of course.
Anyway.
And all the people who summon Pinhead and Cenobites are dissatisfied with their material existence and want something more. Yes, even Kirsty, our protagonist. But that something more is too much for most. Pinhead's chains being so iconic, it's strange to know that he only uses them on two people, and they're both the villains of those movies. Notably, they're even more morally ambiguous in the novella, The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. In the film, when Frank summons the Cenobites at the start, they take him away. The puzzle solving is consent enough. In the novella, however, they actually ask him multiple times for consent. Even more remarkable, at the end of the novella, they honor their deal with Kirsty. In some of the comics, they're even willing to protect young children from their abusers, given the situation aligns with their interests. Now, compare that to Hellraiser 3, where Pinhead just massacres an entire nightclub and turns random people into Cenobites. That's far more evil, and far less interesting. Come Hellraiser 4, the Cenobites are even more boring. They just want to take over the world, which is really dull. However, the conception from those who haven't seen a Hellraiser movie is that they're monstrous, evil, the main villains of the films, rape demons, oddly enough, despite never committing any sexual assault in the mainline films. This perception is wrong, because it's just not reflective of the reality of the core story that people fall in love with. Hellraiser 3 and 4 failed because the writers didn't understand what made the Cenobites interesting, and in turn made them generic, boring, and
No, so this is of course, but again, you're appealing to an inconsistency with that portrayal from other previous forms of media. That is the annoying thing. If Hellraiser 3 was released with a completely different narrative, but the concept of there's demons that want to kill people, it could very well be interesting, but not with the Cenobites, because that's inconsistent with their portrayal. I
The
still,
the worst you could
go ahead.
say about this is that the writers of 3 and 4 tried to take them in a different direction, but it didn't work. That's the worst
Yeah.
you could say about this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like a case of, I feel that there's going to be an attempt here inevitably to transpose the fact that, hey, they did this, when they were more one-dimensional and evil, more one-dimensional in their evil, I guess you could argue, even though they're still pretty one-dimensional, just so we're clear.
Yes.
Like they are entirely one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Even in Hellraiser 1 and 2, they just, are used effectively in that particular dimension. But then in Hellraiser 3 and 4, they maintain the one dimensionality, but they abruptly change the dimension that they, the dimension that they're viewing them through.
They trade
Which
one.
that's
They
the
trade
problem.
one kind of one-dimensional evil for a different kind of one-dimensional evil, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Which is in conflict, and those two are incongruent, right? Because we have one evil which is a very chaotic, destructive. We want to, take over, like destroy things and like humanity and take over and turn people into Cenobites, versus the very, like rules-based, single dimension evil still from the previous ones, but one that had a lot more build-up and a lot more weight and what people enjoyed.
Yeah.
But you're not, just to be clear, even if he is accurate here, he is not proving a rule. He is showing an example where it didn't work.
Yes.
Antagonists. They made the Cenobites a race of evil, when they're far more nuanced and far more morally ambiguous. That doesn't say they are not dangerous. It's just simply that
No, they're
defining
still not
something so
morally ambiguous.
No. It's like
The morality is very straightforward. They are evil, but they will only act under specific circumstances. They are evil with
yes.
rules.
Yes.
in
They are
terms as
lawful
medieval as
evil.
good and evil is reducing them in some ways, and reducing the levels of terror they invoke, which I think does them a great disservice.
I can feel myself rot.
To parallel this onto something that is more generally agreeable to be evil, it's alluded to, I think in Andor a few times, but there are places in the Empire, the
I hate
Galactic
that
Empire,
show. Go on.
that I like Andor a lot. All right, sorry, but
Go
like
on.
there
Go
are
on.
places. My point was there are places in the Galactic Empire that prosper for their presence, right?
Mhm.
Like they're not destroying everything. So again, much the same as the Cenobites, they are a evil force with rules.
Yeah.
So and sometimes it turns out those rules work for people, and when they work for people, they can lead to good outcomes. But the point is, whether or not they do work, they will enforce them. That is the evil component. They are
Yeah.
choosing to enforce them at any cost, and that could range from a planet that has perfectly good relations with them and has seen a massive boom in trade and prosperity for their presence, and it could lead to blowing up a planet for non-complacency.
Mhm.
Like there you go. That's the duality.
Yeah.
But there's a different kind of evil as well. Diseases, curses. The Heartless, the Dark Eldar, zombies, vampires. All of these are characters who are afflicted by some ailment that drives them to do great evil. The Heartless are consumed by the darkness. The Dark Eldar feed on pain in order to keep their souls from dying. Vampires drink blood to remain alive. All of these figures are afflicted. It is in their nature to inflict harm. So naturally, they should be pure evil, right? Well, not really. As we've outlined before, evil needs to be a choice. If you're forced to do evil due to some greater affliction,
Oh my god,
that
he's
choice
acknowledged it. He's acknowledged it for the first time in the video that not having a choice per his own rule means that you can't be evil. Hey. All right.
to commit evil
I
is
like
removed
this.
from
Let's go.
you. It's taken from you. There's an external evil forcing you to do bad. Yes, many vampire societies and the Dark Elder Society are evil in structure, and we'll get to evil societies in a second, don't you worry. The forces driving them to commit violence kind of have them by the throat. If they don't feed, they'll die. Or worse. Again, this is a matter where they're dangerous and malignant, but not necessarily pure evil. Several stories that even feed into the idea that the afflicted can be horrified by their own actions. Louis from Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles, for example, is so mortified by his undeath that fellow vampire Lestat basically roasts him for the entire book, and several after. In some stories, like the original Dracula, the vampire is seen as supernaturally compulsed to do evil. See Lucy, one of Dracula's many victims in the book, who goes from a sweet, shy girl to a killer of children. But Lucy herself isn't evil. The affliction that Dracula spreads is. Everyone, including Lucy's fiancé and her numerous friends, end her life in order to save her soul
she's
from this curse.
well, that's the thing. She's a different entity at that
Yeah.
point, right?
Yes.
Like Lucy.
Pretty much. Yes.
Yeah, like Lucy isn't in any meaningful sense. She's not the same person beyond strictly like elements that could pass for visual, right?
Yeah.
Like that's her mind is gone.
Mhm.
So like it's a case of at that point you could say that yeah, like she is corrupted by something that is causing the evil. But then you could make the case that she was evil if she knew the consequences and she chose to pursue it, like some vampires do,
Yes.
right? So like that would be the morality component of it. But like
Right.
I don't think that this is yeah, like well, of course this goes without saying that things that again we've been over this. If something makes you evil by necessity, that's what you are. But interestingly, vampires are actually a really bad example because it's pretty understood that vampires thirst for blood. They want it. They desire it.
Yeah.
But they don't need it to survive often. It's
Not
very rare that
necessarily,
they.
no.
Yeah.
And if they
Hence,
need it, it depends on the series.
yeah. Like even in Interview with the Vampire, right? It's like the idea that you can drink rat blood. Like you could essentially drink animal blood in order to sustain yourself, but Lestat chooses to drink human blood because he likes it the most.
Yes.
So like that's kind of the thing with them. Vampires are more complex than this.
Yes.
Just to be clear.
Anyway.
Destroying a vampire is seen as a good because it saves the person compelled to do evil. When we get to zombies, it's even more simplistic. They're shambling corpses that bite people and eat them. Very few zombie films actually go into why zombies eat people, though the ones that do are existentially horrific. Return to the Living Dead is a great horror comedy, but there is one scene in this comedy that I find genuinely nightmare-inducing. Not because of what you see, but because of what you learn. The zombies in Return of the Living Dead are unkillable, and they can talk. Eventually, they strap down a zombie and ask why they do what they do. And the answer is horrifying.
Why? The pain! The pain of being dead. It makes the pain go away.
Unlike some afflicted who feed for nourishment physically, they feed for nourishment existentially. And there are other examples of zombies too, like the Flood in Halo. They spread, consume, and spread. It's their mission. It's their only...
Yeah, so really quickly. Okay. So this is... We're going to simplify it because there's a lot of worthwhile discussion about what is like a reasonable expectation of a person and how far individual self-sacrifice, like how much self-sacrifice you can expect from someone, right? However, those zombies are evil because they're making a moral choice.
Yes.
Like they aren't, they wouldn't fall under the category of what you're trying to kind of define here of non-choice creatures.
Yeah.
They choose to be evil because they want to not be in pain. Now, as sympathetic as that is still a choice, right? Like, so their immorality is chosen. So they kind of don't qualify for this category.
Yeah.
It's like it's just like weird. I don't know why you'd really bring them up. But yeah, I mean, it's like a case of is that compelling and can that elicit a different kind of fear? Of course, it's like the idea of the existence of being a zombie in this universe becomes all the more terrifying for the knowledge, right? That it's eat or be in tremendous continual pain, but it's not inherently more terrifying than the classic zombies without explanation leveraged effectively. So I know this is shifting mediums, but the zombies in Resident Evil and survival horror games are scary because they could elicit a loss of progress, for example, right? That's a scary component of them. And so you're keen to avoid confrontation because you're risking, in very as literal sense as you can get in a simulation, you are risking your life every time you do, right?
Yes.
That's an element of terror that can work just as well.
Mission, but it's when the grave mind develops that we see the Flood are capable of great evil. The grave mind represents the entire argument in Micro. A small entity needs to feed, that's nature. But a sophisticated creature able to weigh the morality of its own actions and choosing to dominate everything on their own terms, that is evil. And the grave mind makes for a compelling, horrific villain. But those it afflicts, the individual members of the Flood, being part of its destructive hive mind, are extensions of its own will, because the Flood is just an organism and just needs to survive.
Meaning schmeaning. The whole world's going bye-bye. You included.
So we've come...
I think he'd have to agree then that the orcs, with this previous Flood example, the orcs in Lord of the Rings don't qualify anymore, right? Because they are just extensions of Sauron's will. They're corrupted, fallen elves corrupted by Sauron, well, Morgoth, then Sauron, to basically serve his desire for absolute order. So yeah, it's I don't know why they were flashed earlier as a bad example, but anyway.
Come to it by now, right? The evil race? Well, not so fast, because there's another caveat here. Are we talking about societies that are evil or species that are evil on a genetic level? I know, caveats, but trust me.
Why are we going through all of this? You set it up. It's fine. Like when I said I needed examples, I didn't mean I needed fucking 40 minutes of them. I just needed like 1 or 2 to understand what you were talking about. Like, my God.
This distinction is very important. An evil society is one that promotes wickedness as a virtue, and often they're based on real power structures, from cults to fascist authorities, but the fact remains, the problem is the social hierarchy. A great example of this? The Drow. In the Forgotten Realms, or Faerun, Menzo Berenzon is home to the Drow, a race of dark elves who were cursed with dark skin by... You know what? I'm not going to unpack the racial implications of that.
Oh my... Didn't you just say earlier you wouldn't make any?
Why would you... Also, like, why would you... Yeah, dude. They have dark skin. They live in the dark. It's more conducive. Naturally, of course. Lot gave them that because they were going to be surviving in the Underdark. They also... Drow are actually really interesting, which is why I'm pissed that they're changing, like, for example, they don't get, like... So in normal D&D mechanics, they had, like, really, really good dark vision. They super far in the darkness,
They could see in the
essentially.
dark, yeah.
Yeah, and, like, the reason for that is they see in...
Kino.
Hiya. Like they see an infrared, which was like another thing that they were given as like the ability in order to basically better survive in the Underdark and to thrive there, which they do. Like it is very in several like canonical sources, it is alluded to that the Drow are the most powerful force in the Underdark, and like Menza Berenzan is the most like dominating thing there. It's surpassing even like Mind Flayer colonies, surpassing everything because they are just perfectly adapted to live there, and they've created a society that thrives, with the blessing of Loth, obviously. So, yeah, like I'm glad we're acknowledging the Drow as an exception. That's cool, but why are we bringing in the racial aspect of it? They are literally only dark-skinned because they are like the other thing is the Drow are heavily in favor of eugenics. Like they are known to be beautiful. They are known to be and only the fittest of the species survive by design. Like they will kill you if you're basically you look like you might not be best fit for survival. You play Baldur's Gate, Minthara will tell you all about it because thankfully Larian is not cocked like WotC, and they will include that.
Yeah, good.
Anyway, yeah, carry on.
The Berenzon society is dominated by the Spider Queen Loth, an evil entity who has crafted a society centered on upward mobility. Please, Spider Queen, and you
also
will eventually...
be clear, just one thing, because he's fucking... Menza Berenzon is just one city, there's multiple cities, but anyway.
Rise up the ranks. Ways your house can rise up? Slaying your enemies in cold blood. The sneakier, the better. Also, eradicate the quote-unquote evil surface dwellers, especially the high-end wood elves. Being in the Spider Queen's favor grants incredible boons of power. Failing Loth means a fate worse than death. Because of the actions of Menza Berenzon's many houses, surface dwellers in Faerun, from Baldur's Gate to Waterdeep, fear Drow. However, there are many Drow who have broken away from Menza Berenzon to either strike out or start their own lives somewhere else. If the source of evil is that they serve an evil emperor with selfish intent, that's far more nuanced. This is opposed to races that are on a genetic level evil, like, say, the aliens from Independence Day. Independence Day is an incredibly fun movie with some of the most boring alien enemies ever.
Are you
There's a
kidding
reason
me?
we barely see these guys until the third act. The aliens are not interesting inherently. They just destroy and drive our protagonists, who are interesting, to act. And that's great for that last part. The movie never aspires to explore the alien mentality. They're just an abstract force the heroes need to rally up against. But as villains, they're just boring. They're sort of like locusts, though we never see them harvest.
Who gives a fuck?
I don't know how you can possibly define them as boring when you've just agreed that their presence is what creates the interesting, scenario for our characters to contend with.
Yes.
Like, again, you're fucking it. They don't... The individual... They're an obstacle that's presenting a scenario, right?
Yes.
They are no different from the wall in a room. You can say that's boring on a character level, but that's not a criticism then. Like, you'd agree they're serving their purpose, right? And they're serving it well. So that's not a problem with the story. The story works fine. I certainly think that Independence Day has a lot of flaws, but like for the purposes of this, let's suppose it doesn't, right?
You know, he keeps trying to apply the same expectations to every freaking piece of media. Like, oh, it has to have like this story and has to explain the bad guys. It's like Doom earlier. Doom is not a story-heavy game. Independence Day, it's not a story-heavy movie. It's like he's basically it's like he goes into every fucking piece of media with the exact same expectations for it. You know what I'm saying? When
Yeah, like
when
he
really
thinks that,
each piece of media is trying to accomplish different things. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, like he thinks that the conceptual, he definitely thinks there's like an ideal movie conceptual focus out there to create the perfect, fun, enjoyable movie, and deviations from that are boring? Question mark. It's like, okay, so this is the, it's just the thing with making anything, right? Like you can say, if the conceptual focus on something is to highlight a very clear black and white like like a black and white morality issue, then yeah, it's gonna probably have something slightly one-dimensional to serve as an obstacle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going into what we said at the very start. These are metaphysical representations of you know things that impede our ability to get a desirable outcome. They could be anything. They happen to be aliens in this one.
Yeah.
Um,
It kind of reminds me of the disconnect critics had back in the day with John Carpenter's The Thing and Steven Spielberg's E.T.
yeah, a little bit.
It like how uh, it was essentially because the alien wasn't humanized or sympathetic or
Mhm.
something, and it was
Yeah.
too its motivations weren't fleshed out. But in the context of the story of The Thing, it makes complete sense. It's trying to get back to its own world, and it's trying to uh, get back at the. It's trying to kill off the Arctic crew so it doesn't get in its
Mhm.
way.
Like, does Ant
Yeah.
just want every single movie, comic, show, and game or whatever to just go into extensive detail about the freaking bad guys that the good guys are gonna go up against? Is that what he wants?
It sounds like he
Well,
needs pointless lore dumps from the Destiny franchise.
Yes.
well, I mean, like, here's a question: if like, right, so let's go to video games because they're, I think, the simplest ones for this. So, Darkest Dungeon has a conceptual focus of stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a large part of understanding the stressful scenarios in that game is that there are monsters who are, applying stress as a status effect literally to your heroes and are trying to kill you, right? So the stress translates into, you being able to, uh, effectively being stressed out both in game and out of game. Um, if you understood more, the more knowledge you have, the more assured you are, the less stressful the game becomes. So that's like why many people would say that the first run through a game like Darkest Dungeon or Fear and Hunger or those kinds of games that are trying to make you, like survival horror games as well, like the first run is the best one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where you're the most afraid, the most in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
If every single creature in Darkest Dungeon, do they need to have like an extensive lore? Like, surely not. And it's like, in a sense, you could say because there is obviously an inherent backdrop of the ancestor in Darkest Dungeon, who and he will explain how specific enemies were like boss enemies, right? Like, essentially ran afoul of him and how he punished them. But it's just like a case of no, it's a world where a bunch of things are twisted and corrupted and they're trying to kill you. That elicits the stress. That's good enough. We don't need more.
Mm-hmm.
If we do more, it could undermine the stress element a bit, right? Because you're
Yeah.
like, oh, uh, these guys, did they choose to be evil? Did they not choose to be evil? It's like I don't care. Like it's not important for the conceptual focus. And if you try to as a certain movie that may or may not start with the and end with well, actually fuck, I could confuse that with the sixth one. The Last Jedi is what I'm thinking of. Having too many thematic focuses in a movie can amount to something that's very confused and very bloated.
Yes.
Like, you're trying to do too much at once. So sometimes it's better to remain focused, clean, and you don't need to explain every element of it.
Right.
Our resources. They just travel from planet to planet, destroying everything before moving on to the next planet. And this is incredibly boring. They have incredible technology. They can't just use that. They're clearly not running out of resources when they come to Earth. Also, why not go to an unoccupied planet? Why have to eradicate a whole species of people? Because it's clear that it's fun for them. They're just choosing at a certain point to destroy life. A lot of 1950s alien invaders are like this. They show up, try to harvest the planet, kidnap our women, and then we have to blow them up. It's shocking when stuff like
what if,
Okay, well, pause real quick. Sorry, go ahead, Jan.
You go. I'll go after.
Yeah, I find it interesting that Ant's the one giving this sort of criticism when you would think that someone of his caliber, or usually in the video essayist sphere, would say this is clearly an allegory for colonialism or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't have any of that to say there, and it's not supposed to be self-reflective. Granted, I don't necessarily think that's what the aliens in Independence Day represent, but
No.
it's interest. I would nonetheless expect a video essayist to apply that sort of reasoning or apply those motivations to them.
Yeah, it's just like, I'll just appeal to what I was saying. Like, who cares? We don't need to. If you find it boring, I'm sorry, but that's a highly subjective problem for you to have.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of us are perfectly capable of engaging with what the conceptual focus of the film is, which isn't on the nature of the alien threat. Just because something isn't a movie doesn't mean it needs to be a core narrative focus or even thematic focus. It can just be a thing. Again, the aliens could be anything. Like, they just happen to be aliens. Like the idea that, oh, they're clear. It's like, it's so funny how you're not able to do this for Michael Myers, but you're able to do this for the aliens. Like, oh, just because they chose to attack a planet with sapient life, they must have these intentions and these feelings. It's like, what if we were just in the way?
Yeah.
And like they were like, all right, this is the closest planet. We're going for that one.
Yeah.
Like, it could be anything. It could be completely. It could be completely detached, non-malicious. Just, hey, we want this planet. We need another planet. This planet is near us. We're going there. We need to exterminate everyone. Like, we can speculate as to their motivations as much as we want, but the point is, it's just not relevant for Independence Day. Like, it doesn't matter what their motivations are. They're here to kill us. You need to kill them back, and we need to discuss, the idea of, unification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There you go.
Variant.
9 from outer space offered more nuance.
So what if we do develop this solar-like bomb? We'd be even a stronger nation than now. Stronger. You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid.
I mean, well, sort of. Other movies, like Humanoids of the Deep or other generic monster films, offer some creatures who are just hardwired to attack us and impregnate our women and then kill them for some reason, sometimes in that order. Sometimes
the xenomorphs.
Look, this isn't like with the xenomorphs, where it's part of their life cycle. The idea here, with Humanoids of the Deep specifically, is that they're just taking women away from the men, first by violating them, and then by destroying them. Maybe. Only one woman survives, and who has to suffer a horrific birth that's clearly inspired by Alien, but lacks that nuanced perspective of the life cycle of the xenomorphs. If the end goal were reproduction, why do they kill their victims? There's only one conclusion. They're evil. Or it's poorly written. One of the two. And then, of course, the video games. Tons of
it could be either one. What if it's just that's like I feel that's like the fucking sword of Damocles hovering over the example. And what if it's just a shit fucking movie? What about that? That's also possible. Like, maybe it's just not that deep, dude. Sometimes, hey, listen, guys, this is like in the 70s. Guys did a bunch of coke. They made a goofy movie. All right, it happens. Like, it's fine. They made a good. Dude, it's just like, see, all the talk of Dungeons & Dragons reminds me, not to tangent too much, but there was like there was like a massive debate with like, some of the artworks of like the D&D, and there was someone who there was like an artist for the official, I think it was the Monster Manual. He like drew an elf in a wheelchair as like an explorer and adventurer, right? And there was like a massive fucking discussion of it, like, all the political sides being like, oh my god, this is so fucking, like, it's like, what do you mean? Can you not have disabled people as adventurers? It's like, dude, that's fine. I didn't say that. I just think it looks fucking goofy. All right.
Yes.
Like, why can't you come up like a mount or something?
Yeah, it's like the thing. It's like I hate how politicized everything has become in a sense, because am I not just allowed to think that something is goofy or cringe? Can I just think that, please, without having a political slot?
Why does everything have to be a contemporary modern thing?
Like, I'm sorry, it's
be imaginative in the setting.
I'm sorry, but the first time I saw the wheelchair elf, I was like, holy fuck, hopefully that dungeon doesn't have stairs. Like, that person's fucked if it does, right? It's just goofy, all right? It's not a big deal, man. Sometimes they're just goofing, all right? Fine. It's not that deep.
orcs, just there for us to punch a lot. This is why the generic evil races are more welcomed in the gaming sphere than in books and literature and film. Because in a game, you need to punch a lot of people, at least in theory. Games like Final Fantasy might have super developed lore for each game, but their go-to monsters tend to be just pure evil that is no...
Okay, depends on the Final Fantasy game, my guy. Like, let's not pretend those games aren't fucking silly sometimes,
Yes.
right? Like, it's like 6 is good, 7 is depends.
7 is good, but it's overrated. Yes.
Yeah, like they made some choices in that one that didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, it's fun, don't get me wrong, but yeah, like
Final Fantasy VIII is called unplayable sometimes because of the
Final
system.
Fantasy VIII is fucking garbage.
8
Like,
has a good 8 in my opinion has a good plot, but holy fuck, is it not fun to play?
Yeah, like because it completely takes away like all the essentially choice because you're just like every character you can make into anything, so you just
Every
junction the best
every
ones and
character is the exact same. You don't bother leveling
Yeah.
them up. Just level up your GFs.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are
like, there you go.
yes, the fucking characters who act out the story are not important. The characters who are important are your fucking big ass monster bros
Let's go, baby.
who are somehow draining your memories. Anyway.
Don't forget the 2-minute cutscene every time they take a turn as well. That's always great.
Oh yeah. Ugh.
No nuance, there's no perspective, just fight them. Now, sometimes a story tries to justify the evil nature of a race by implying that
It's like, okay, hang on, Ant, hang on. Let me go back.
super developed. This is why the generic evil races are more welcomed in the gaming sphere than in books and literature and film. Because in a game, you need to punch a lot of people, at least in theory. Games like Final Fantasy might have super developed lore for each game, but their go...
Okay, Ant, tell me, what the hell should Abzu's story here be? Fucking Don Corneo's sewer monster. What should his story be? Go for it. Go ahead, bro. I'm all ears. Let us know in the comments below.
This is tax policy.
Why is he so averse to like the idea of it's just a fucking chunko creature you fight in a sewer, man?
Yes.
It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yes.
It's
Again,
fine.
Jan, what is his tax policy?
Yeah, what does he? How does he feel about the how does he feel about the JQ? You know, that's what I really care about.
tend to be just pure evil that is no nuance, there's no perspective, just fight them. Now, sometimes a
I say we ground pound the GQ.
story tries to justify the evil nature of a race by implying that they were all made by a villain, perhaps in a lab or by magic. While this ignores the Frankensteinian implications of conjuring life, it effectively turns evil armies into extensions of the big bad. In this case, if you strike down one of his mob, you're actually striking down an aspect of the greater evil you're already trying to stop.
We've already been here, I feel.
We've already been down
All
here,
quandaries there. This is why games like Shadow of the Colossus, Undertale, and Spec Ops: The Line are so effective. They force you to confront the lives you're snuffing out. In most other games, the less you think about it, the better. That reason.
Yeah, well, again, in those games, that's the exact fucking goal of the narrative. The vast majority, it isn't.
I'm sorry. Is he citing Spec Ops: The Line as an example of a game where the bad guys are like an extension of? Can you go back like 30 seconds, please?
Right.
I'm sorry.
Just
Spec Ops: The Line is something
now,
I feel very
sometimes a
strongly
story
about.
tries to justify the evil nature of a race by implying that they were all made by a villain, perhaps in a lab or by magic. While this ignores the Frankensteinian implications of conjuring life, it effectively turns evil armies into extensions of the big bad. In this case, if you strike down one of his mob, you're actually striking down an aspect of the greater evil you're already trying to stop. No more quandaries there. This is why games like Shadow of the Colossus, Undertale, and Spec Ops: The Line are so effective. They force you to confront the lives you're snuffing out. In most other games, the less you think about it, the better. That raises the question: are there any good all-evil races?
Yeah, okay. That's. I think that's fair for Spec Ops: The Line. For a second, I was like, is he alluding that Spec Ops: The Line is like, you know, you're snuffing out the evil armies of Conrad? But like, yeah, no, that's not the point he's making.
Hooray, Ants! You got one.
Well, yes, the Scavine.
You
They're
got
great.
right.
This is a bunch of chaotic ratkin. I love them. I
What
was never
the
like a
fuck
big.
did he call them? The Scavine? The Skaven?
He called. Hang on. Hold on.
He got a dub and he immediately had to convert it to an L.
Hold up.
Undertale and Spec Ops: The Line are so effective. They force you to confront the lives you're snuffing out. In most other games, the less you think about it, the better. That raises the question: are there any good all-evil races? Well, yes, the Scavine.
Oh my god, you idiot! Fucking Christ! When the hell have they ever been called the Scavine? You
Yes, yes. Man thing calls us green. Yes, sniff more warpstone. Ratkin. Freaking love Skaven.
They're great. There's a bunch of chaotic ratkin. I love them. I was never like a big Warhammer fan myself, but just knowing these
We
things
can
exist
tell.
now.
Yeah, we can tell.
Yeah, we can tell, Ant. We can tell you've never touched
We
them.
know.
We know you've never
know.
touched them until you grew like your fucking until you decided I'm gonna become a fucking leftoid video essayist.
Let's just go ahead. Sorry.
I'm a following the footsteps of the greats like fucking Quentin, Lindsay Ellis, Jack Saint, and Eric Taxon. Yeah, great. Anyway.
Knowing these things
just hold up the Dog Brotherhood card of we know. It's like, yeah, dude.
Yes, we know.
Yeah.
exist now in literature, I'm now interested in doing more research into both Warhammer Classic and Warhammer 40k, just because of these.
Oh, you're gonna get your ass reamed out by fucking Arch, and who's the other guy? Trying to think of his name.
Luthen?
Who?
Luthen, I think. He also makes like Warhammer stuff. There's a
Probably.
lot of them though.
I'm a fucking look it up here. Hang on.
These guys, they're kind of wonderful. But let's analyze this from a storytelling perspective. There's only one story you can tell with an evil race. Stop them. There are many stories you can tell with an evil society, from intrigue to rebellion to deconstructing the hierarchy of power, and yes, stopping them, but it should be clear that an evil race.
But Ant, sorry, I'm just asking for, my friend here. So like, if you can only tell one type of story, but you can tell it very well, because this is the thing, it's like, yeah, the plot is one thing, but the characters are another thing, so you can still have interesting characters in the plot dynamic that you're working with. So you would agree you can still tell good stories with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not in contention. In which case, what's the point of your video again?
Yeah. The point is, there is no point. As McGann, that's what I was thinking of. Anyway.
Oh yeah. Okay, fair.
This narrative restricts a story rather than opens it up to different conflicts. You can tell fewer stories this way, not more. But I think I've very clearly omitted one particular evil race.
Oh, really?
What about orcs?
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
Orcs are the go-to evil race for many fantasy campaigns. They're big, powerful, and vile. Warcraft was one of the first pieces of media to popularize the idea of the friendly orc, or at least the noble orc. Before that, they were a race of evil, monsters, and all of it lifted from Tolkien. The orcs are elves that have been corrupted by Morgoth. Orcs, by the way, were just one of the many fell beings of shadow corrupted by Morgoth to enact his will. However, Morgoth's lieutenant, Sauron, went on to forcibly breed the orcs, employing eugenics to create a greater army. When Morgoth abandoned his orcs, they were left in disarray, having now been bred to only understand violence. They formed several factions that Sauron, upon his return, managed to unite under his banner. The orcs in many ways exist as a parallel to the influence the Ring of Power had on its victims, only unlike Gollum, who was overwhelmed by Sauron's will in a pitiful, tragic fashion, the orcs were bred to enact that will. However, they're no less afflicted than Gollum, despite their greater power. Orcs, in effect, exist as a corruption of nature. They're not naturally occurring, but rather a species forced into the likeness of a false god's image. In effect, they're an extension of Morgoth's and later Sauron's evil. Maybe. Even in Tolkien's Legendarium, the origins of orcs are complicated. What I just detailed to you is a general amalgamation of Tolkien's multiple orc origins. In the Silmarillion, we read, "By slow arts of cruelty were corrupted and enslaved, and thus did Melkor breed the hideous race of the orcs, in envy and mockery of the elves." In the Two Towers, Treebeard explains that all of Sauron's dark forces are parodies of naturally occurring creatures in Middle-earth, saying, "Trolls are only counterfeits, made by the enemy in the great darkness, in mockery of Ents, as orcs or of elves." However, again, in the Silmarillion, we hear another origin. Whence the orcs came, or what they were, the elves knew not of them, thinking perhaps to be Avari, who had become evil and savage in the wild, in which they guessed all too near.
Pause. I don't like the framing of this. I don't know if he's doing it on purpose, but it seems like he's framing it like, oh, they have a very confused origin story. So what we just heard was a definite, like, the account of a third-person narrator as per Morgoth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which he would be the supreme authority on orc making, seeing as he's agreed to have made the orcs, right?
Yes.
So that's the story. Morgoth made them, and now the Ents in Two Towers have a different understanding of orcs because they're a different entity, and the elves had a different understanding of orcs as well. This is completely fine. You can have different people in the universe have different understandings of the creation, but of course, like, when it comes to how they were actually made and why, we're gonna go with Big M because he's the one who made them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there you go. It's It seems like he's framing it like, oh, it's very confused and hard to read. It's like, no, there was an original creation, and these races have different interpretations. Right?
And Jan,
Yeah.
Morgoth is not lying about how he made the orcs, right?
Why would he?
Okay, all right, okay.
Like,
I mean,
yeah, like,
villains are one to lie, so.
yeah, no, yeah. Well, the thing is, so it's not Morgoth directly who's telling us, right? But it's like, so the Silmarillion in and of itself is a very weird book. I don't know if either of you've read it, but
Yeah, it's less of a coherent, like a straightforward story, and just a lot of footnotes.
All right.
Like a
yeah.
history.
So I have it here with me, incidentally, but it's more like a Bible almost, with a narrator who's it's told entirely from like the third person. There's no dialogue at all in the Silmarillion. It's like if you've read if you've ever read like the Iliad or like some of the Greek epics and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Or again, the Bible is a good example. It's like an account of what happened in that age, right?
Yeah.
And per that narration, Morgoth created them.
All right.
And the reason he created it's like he basically took like a corrupted form of elves and he turned them into orcs. And then as Ant was actually correct with his description there, with the initial understanding that Sauron, who later followed after Morgoth was defeated, basically bred more orcs in obviously Mordor, Barad-dûr, like the surrounding areas, right? Which is it brings the power cock to everything up, but that's one of the many, many, many things they fucked up. Is obviously Sauron created Mordor, not fucking whatever his name was. I forgot that guy's name. But yeah. Anyway, crack on. That's just a thing that annoyed me here.
Anyway.
It is said. The Avari, by the way, are essentially Tolkien's equivalent to the Dark Elves, elves to the east that had not traveled to Valinor. But this creates a few ethical problems that Tolkien in his works never explored, but Tolkien in his letters brooded over. If orcs were created to be evil, then they were denied the choice to do ill, and thus can't be compared to humanity's moral standards. But if orcs are fallen creatures, then they are capable of redemption and thus can be redeemed. In the article titled, "Let Us Now Praise Famous Orcs, Simple Humanity and Tolkien's Inhuman Creatures," published in Mythlore, Robert T. Talley Jr. writes, "This uneasiness is understandable when considering the origins of orcs, i.e. in Tolkien's world, not the philological or folkloric origins in ours. A subject of some disagreement, as even Tolkien changed his mind over time. Indeed, in unpublished manuscripts written in the 1950s and 60s, see Morgoth's Ring, Tolkien toyed with several different ideas to explain the orcs' essence, ranging from corrupted men, rather than corrupted elves, to low-level Maya, and hence fallen angels, like Sauron himself, and even to automata without reason, who were essentially puppets controlled by Morgoth or Sauron, an admittedly unlikely scenario. So why was Tolkien so torn up about orcs? Well, it comes to Tolkien's philosophy as a Catholic. In Middle-earth, only good can create, so why would a good god create an evil race? Evil in Tolkien's world exists to pervert and twist creation, but not make something new. And orcs were new. The other issue became moral. As we see in The Hobbit, orcs can raise families. Bolg blames Thorin Oakenshield for the death of his father, Azog, in the book. That implies that Bolg's attack is one motivated by a very sincere motivation, vengeance. Be it vengeance out of pride or genuine love for his father, Bolg is feeling a very real, very human emotion. So Tolkien struggled to reconcile these contradictory elements when constructing the orc. And yes, I know that The Hobbit uses goblin and orc interchangeably, but for the sake of argument, if the movies call them all orcs, they're orcs. So Tolkien had a problem. How do you justify
No, why? How can you say that? That's just like the movies. What? The movies and the books are different, my guy.
Yes.
There's a lot of differences, in fact. Like especially as far as the Hobbit is concerned. So I guess to address briefly his diatribe here about Tolkien and why he second guessed himself a lot. So Tolkien, as anyone, had a lot of reflections and posts about his work. He would often ruminate on, could I have done this differently? Could I have tweaked this? In the actual material that he published, which as far as, the canon of the universe is concerned, because Tolkien's musings about his own story do not, as interesting as they are, I don't mean to denigrate them, right? But as interesting as they are, nevertheless are not part of the canon narrative. And so the canon narrative remains what was outlined. They are corrupted elves who were initially seduced by Morgoth and then mass-produced by Sauron. They are, we understand, not really capable of redemption. If they are, it is not explicitly explored in the story whatsoever. And for the purpose of the story, they are basically corrupted creatures that are an extension of Sauron's will, or well, Morgoth's than Sauron's, right? They are foot soldiers, once again.
Oy fucking vey.
Race. The heroes would fight and kill, without any ethical dilemma, while still maintaining the philosophical framework from which your work is built? The simple answer is you don't. But that didn't stop other writers from using orcs, trolls, and goblins as generic bad guys, especially Gary Gygax in early Dungeons & Dragons. Though in fairness to early D&D, plot was secondary to gameplay. But nowadays, D&D is a role-playing
Why are you
haven.
showing Dragonlance? That's not D&D.
I have no idea.
That's a book. Whatever.
In those early days, it was a dungeon crawler, so you needed bad guys to fight. Ethics be damned. I'm not faulting early D&D adventures for failing to develop orcs. I am, however, critical of novels that relied on these evil races to fill their pages with fights.
Oh, really?
Especially the Dark Elf trilogy, written by R.A. Salvatore, because this series should have known better.
AKA the 20,000 units guy.
No day goes by where I am not tempted to return.
R.A. Salvatore's never living that shit down, I'm telling you.
Yeah, but like, nevertheless, like the Drizzt trilogy, as it's often called, is like it's a case of, well, the books are obviously focused on something else. Again, the orcs are foot soldiers in that. They are not, like, and it was consistent with the lore back in the day. So like, it's a case of you can. The fact that Tolkien had these considerations, and like as you pointed out, Backseat, a lot of it was for him based in his own faith, right? Which is like a case of because he saw Eru, that essentially created deity, as like the god of the universe, and then Morgoth was the devil, right? So that's why like he like settled on corruption because he didn't want them to like be making the orcs, but then Saruman and that sort of thing can obviously create Uruk-hai. And Sauron, we know, can create orcs, or like definitely did create orcs. It's like he had a lot of quandaries about his work in retrospect, which is perfectly natural, by the way. Like, I just look how often like fucking George R. R. Martin writes about his work rather than writing his own, rather than writing his fucking work. But whatever the case may be, authors will often have second guesses about whatever they created, right?
It's called creator backlash. Yeah.
Fucking hope that you have some second guesses about this video, incidentally. But anyway,
I hope Ant has second guesses about his entire fucking career and possibly his life.
One of the most powerful lines in Skyrim comes when you talk to the dragon Paarthurnax about the nature of good and evil.
Oh wow, Skyrim, of course, the peak of creator. Oh my fucking god, why are we referencing Skyrim? Like...
Oh, now I really wish Sahara was here. He's a big Bethesda fan. Well,
what a downgrade.
Well, I mean, he has a love-hate relationship with Bethesda, but anyway.
Elder Scrolls are instinctually driven to.
He likes their games, but he hates Bethesda themselves.
And subjugate those beneath them. But Paarthurnax has resisted his instincts in order to leave the world better off. He asks us one simple question.
What is better, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through great effort?
Evil races are often used as external adversaries. You can mow them down without moral quandaries, but when you use them for internal examinations, then they become powerful. How can one be good if it's easy? The Forgotten Realms' Drizzt Do'Urden, by all accounts, is the antithesis to the evil race discussion in general. Born in Menzo Berenzon, the place where the drow worship Lolth, the Spider Queen, Drizzt is raised to be another tool for House Do'Urden. But thanks to the teachings of his father, learns to deprogram the lessons that drow society fought to instill in him. And so he goes out to experience the world, now with eyes uncontaminated by his former bigotries. I'm about to criticize the third book of the Dark Elf trilogy, but I want to emphasize that these first two books are incredibly powerful works that honestly do ring true to anyone who's ever had to unlearn toxic lessons instilled in them by society. Drizzt has plenty of empathy towards his fellow drow. He refuses to kill any, knowing that they're influenced by the evil cult of the Spider Queen. Later, we encounter Clacker, an innocent peck, transformed by a wizard into a hook horror. We watch in a manner that reminds me of Jeff Goldblum's transformation in The Fly, as Clacker's humanity is erased in favor of his monstrous instincts. Still, until the last, he fights against his evil nature. Indeed, the whole second book is filled with people resisting to evil natures, from Drizzt resisting his instincts as a hunter that he's been forced to develop to survive in the Underdark, to Drizzt's father, brainwashed and resurrected under House Do'Urden's command. But what makes everything frustrating is that while Drizzt has to overcome his evil nature, he doesn't seem to care when encountering gnolls, orcs, and goblins. He kills them with hesitation.
Why would he?
As far as the story is concerned and his understanding is concerned, they are, well, number one, trying to kill him a lot of the times, and obviously he doesn't have the intrinsic deep understanding that he has with the drow or the connection he has with that other character.
Yeah.
It's like a case of, they're trying to kill him, he'll kill him, By the way, he will fight drow, he'll try not to kill them, but he will still fight them, he'll hurt them, he'll, sever limbs if need be.
Yep.
It's like the Batman thing, right? Like, he's not killing them, but he's fine with severely maiming them. So
Because despite all the effort the series goes into detailing how Drow society grooms evil, Drizzt can't extend any sympathy to those orcs. Because they're evil, we see him refuse to...
No, it's because they're trying to fucking kill him, dumbass. It's like,
Yeah, and it's like,
if
of
Michael
course-
Myers breaks into my house and he's gonna kill me, he can't be reasoned with. I don't care about how bad of a fucking childhood he has. I'm going to kill him or he's gonna kill me.
Also, I'm pretty sure Drizzt tries to talk to them a few times, but it's like a case of they just try to kill him, right?
Yes.
And it's like, of course, Drizzt. By the way, Drizzt has grown up in the Underdark his whole life. He doesn't have intimate understanding of Gnoll culture or Orc culture as he does with the Drow. So of course, he's going to have a greater level of sympathy for people who, in his view, are suffering the same system he is than people he doesn't know that are trying to kill him.
to kill Clacker, or his sister, because he can only see their potential for goodness, while at the same time, he mows down a dozen orcs in a few swings of his scimitars. Morality, it seems, is approximate science. The closer you are to the protagonist, the less evil you are. And I feel this must have rubbed a lot of players the wrong way too, because over time, orcs and half-orcs, as well as Drow, have become incredibly popular playable characters in Dungeons & Dragons.
Orcs should not fucking be playable characters, I'm sorry. They just really should not be.
And this leads up to the release.
I feel it's fine, but like they still need to have a cultural identity, right? Like what they're
Yes.
doing currently with them is depriving them of, because you can have much the same as with Drow. Like orcs had their own culture, where it was, again, it's like a Klingon thing, like might makes right, sort of if you're the strong orc, you're in charge,
Yeah.
like that sort of thing. It's your standard barbarian like raider type, right? It's not like there's nothing interesting to be explored there, but they don't want to do it because that's bad now apparently. I don't fucking know, like because orcs are black
Baldur's
people or
Gate
something.
3.
Try again.
In many respects, Baldur's Gate 3 exists as a summation of what I'm discussing. Tieflings are a demonic race that are mistrusted by most of Faerun, with some being confused with devils. One such tiefling is Karlach, who even fought among Avernus, Hell's legions. But as anyone who's ever played Baldur's Gate 3 can tell you, Karlach is arguably the most ethical, moral member of your party. Just a ball of sunshine and incredibly strong muscles and just...
She looks like she could throw me over her shoulder and carry me to safety, should the need arise.
Where was I? Yes, Karlach. Karlach is great. But by this point, tieflings were already regarded as misunderstood in modern D&D culture. While tieflings were a playable monster race starting in 3rd edition, in 5th edition, they were elevated to one of the core races in the core rulebook. Tieflings are among the most popular playable races to play, so they've undergone a bit of a redemption among D&D players as of late. But you know what hasn't?
So okay, let's go for a spin here about D&D lore again. So tieflings, initially they were tieflings have also had a bit of a visual transformation. Honestly, they used to be kind of just like humans, like humanish with devil features. Because
they
their
looked
lore
like
is basically
Nightcrawler, basically, right?
Less even than Nightcrawler. They had like Nightcrawler, but skin colored. I would say was kind of their thing. But then they've obviously changed and are more colorful. There's been a more appeal towards a different kind of visual for them as well. But the point being, the lore of tieflings is their ancestors made a pact with Asmodeus, like the basically big cheese devil in the setting, and he corrupted them. And so now every so often, if there's a trace of that lineage, there's a chance of tieflings being born, and they were ostracized. There's additional lore that they can have different infernal bloodlines based on the particular circles of hell as well. Gives them different abilities, sort of thing. Now, the difference between tieflings and something like a mind flayer is that tieflings, while they have a particular heritage, society treats them a particular way, and they might even have a particular they have a predisposition towards maybe mischief and that sort of thing. One other thing that used to be a part of tiefling lore that's I think kind of still adhered to is they take on what's called virtue names, which they will name themselves, they'll name themselves things like despair and avarice, or pleasure and that sort of thing, things that they venerate or they value. Tends to be common tiefling names. So they have a story, but they are not mindless creatures, which the mind flayers, in a sense, paradoxically as it seems to be, are. The mind flayers are puppets of the elder brain. They aren't really because the mind flayer lore is they essentially went to war with aboleths, I believe, like many, many years ago. They were nearly wiped out. They retreated to the Underdark, and now they kind of live there in very select, secluded, isolated colonies. So the instinct that is been imbued to them is survival. The best way to survive is as a colony, and so they exist and protect the Elder Brains as a colony, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even rogue mind players, as was shown in Baldur's Gate 3, still have that inherent impetus to survive. That is their core trait, which tieflings do not really possess. Tieflings are independent, free-thinking creatures. Mind flayers generally are not, and in Baldur's Gate took a creative liberty with saying much the same as with Driss. This is the one exceptional mind flayer, but even he is still not able to transcend that inherent programming on some level, right? So,
Right.
yeah. Next.
Mind flayers. Mind flayers are the go-to evil race in D&D when you want something that's just evil. They eat brains to live. All exist as extensions of a singular elder brain who seeks only to enslave all for its personal benefit. If a mind flayer escapes, they just become a new elder brain with the same goal in mind. And they're essentially the big threat in Baldur's Gate 3. And Baldur's Gate seems intent on offering moral nuances to all its characters. So, does it redeem mind flayers? Now, unlike a true hive mind like the Flood, Illithids aren't under mind control necessarily. The elder brain simply affects the chemicals in their brain that influences their emotions and desires. It makes you want to serve the elder brain rather than overtake your will entirely. So what happens when they break free?
So technically true, but to a point of being a distinction without a difference, really. Like the elder brain communicates with them, and the mind flayer physiology is, and internal biology is such that they want to obey the elder brain. So and to be clear, this is because Ant didn't really explain this very well, but mind flayers do not reproduce sexually. The way mind flayers reproduce is they essentially plant, as Baldur's Gate 3's plot explains this, but they plant tadpoles in captives that turn them into mind flayers. So, that's it's not as though a mind flayer is a society where there's just reproduction and they have a choice. It's they willingly they convert people into mind flayers.
Mm-hmm.
So they go that's why they go after that's why they try to dominate things, because they want to expand, they want to grow, and they want to survive and thrive effectively.
Yeah.
Now, ordinarily a mind flayer would just become a new elder brain, but in Baldur's Gate 3 we see some different options. Baldur's Gate 3 has two good mind flayers, arguably more depending on what choices you make in the game, that have escaped an elder brain's control. They still deal with their incredible hunger, but pursue different goals. There's Omelum, a scholar who seems to genuinely want to help you along your journey. There's one point in the game where you have to break into an underwater prison, and he seems willing to let himself die in order to direct you towards multiple different people who he thinks you need to rescue more. Now granted, you can rescue him, and he's very grateful, but he doesn't seem concerned with his own well-being in the face of others being hurt, either out of a sense of moral obligation or simple logic. Then there's the Emperor, a mind flayer responsible for the creation of Baldur's Gate itself, who may also be manipulating you for a partially selfish reason.
One more point about Amelum, just really quickly. Amelum does show up. He's part of the Society of Brilliance in the game. Very early on, he gives you a ring of mind shielding. There's pretty strong implications that he has some sort of thing that like an external help, effectively, to basically shield yourself, shield himself. Also, at this point, when you're rescuing him, the Emperor is you're still in legion with the Emperor. And so there is some contention as to whether or not the Emperor might be dominating him, so that he helps you, right? Or so that he goes against his programming effectively, because the Emperor is shown to be exceptionally powerful as far as mind flayers are concerned, and he can definitely dominate other creatures. So it's even over long distance. So it's a case of Amelum is an exception. Yes, he's not explained particularly well because he doesn't have too much stuff, but there's a lot of there's a lot of allusions to something being more to him than just him simply choosing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Still works hard to support the party in the face of great evil. Sure, you may have to destroy all of the Githyanki's hopes and dreams in the process, but that's just a coincidence. The Emperor's morality is actually really interesting, because he resorts to some extremely shady choices, but it's for the greater good. I mean, you understand his greater good by the end of it, if you're willing to work with him. But he's also willing to lie, enslave, and murder to get there. But the question is he morally dubious because he's a mind flayer, or was he always like that? And I cannot emphasize this enough. This is a huge spoiler for Baldur's Gate 3. If you choose to let Karlach become a Mind Flayer in the game's climax, you learn in this newly instilled epilogue that she has tried to use her powers for good. When she needs to eat brains, she seeks out those who are terminally ill, asks them for permission, and then chooses to devour their brains, seeing it as a means to preserve their memory within herself. Karlach, you were just too good for this world, even with tentacles. So guess who I romance in the game first? Seriously.
Throw me over her shoulder and carry me to safety.
Now, none of this makes the Mind Flayers good,
Yeah, we
but
get
it
it,
does
dude.
show that goodness can maybe exist in a race that's otherwise seen as pure evil.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Thank you. About
Agree.
fucking time. We wasted 52 minutes. Holy fuck, Ant.
He's
Ah!
completely wrong. Just to be clear, he's completely wrong about the Emperor. The Emperor was Balduran before that. I don't know if he made it to that fight in the game because it's a very hard fight. But there's a dragon you can fight underneath the Worm Rock, and it explains that he was friends with Balduran. Balduran betrayed him, but then Balduran became the Emperor because he was kidnapped. Because he was an adventurer, he was kidnapped by Mind Flayers. Turned into Emperor, yada yada yada. And there's a very good breakdown, a video on YouTube you can go through that essentially explains how every single choice, no matter what the Emperor does, is always in service of self-preservation. I don't know if Ant got to that point, but if you free Orpheus, and with the with the hammer that you can steal from Raphael and or make a bargain with with Raphael, the Emperor betrays you. He sides with the Elder Brain because he thinks that siding with the Elder Brain gives him the greatest chance of victory and survival.
Yep.
Which is completely
The
in
idea
line
of a
with
pure
being a
evil
Mind Flayer.
Race to fight is boring, unless that fight is internal. When a character is able to overcome
Really?
the societal or instinctual programming instilled in them to do bad, that's interesting. In this sense, the evil race is less the focus, and more an emotional struggle against internalized evil. And this opens the door up to so many more stories, rather than limits the viewpoint when it's just fight the bad guy, beat the bad guy, save the world. So going back to that thread I mentioned.
I mean, if you ask me, it sounds like Ant just want. All right, so it sounds like Ant is basically saying, "Hey, let's not have these motherfuckers. Let's not just have these motherfuckers die. Let's like be internal." Well, aren't you just trading one dead end for another dead end? Sounds like that's what he wants.
But his immense problem seems to be with the fact that choosing to have foot soldiers forces you to, on some level in your story, have them always be foot soldiers. But you can use them for a bunch of things. It's again, you can challenge your protagonist in different ways. It's like a case of, and it's an external struggle, not an internal. It's not interesting when it's external. How about the psychology of that's like the thing. It's like they go in tandem, right? The fact that there's an external struggle elicits an internal struggle. So, to put it in context of something like, let's say that 40K will often do this. There's an invading, alien threat that's trying to kill an encampment of whatever the protagonist faction is at the time. How do all the people feel about this? How are they coping with this fact? What are they doing? But you could say, oh, that's only interesting because we're showing the internal, turmoil of those characters. But that's because there's an external pressure.
Yes.
You can't dissociate the two. It's such a such a weird. And even then, is he saying that if we just purely had a fight between two different sides, it would be boring? Have any of you watched those old stick fight videos where it's just like an animation of a fight between a bunch of stick figures? Those are really, really cool and really entertaining to watch, and there's a lot of artistic merit to them. Art can exist beyond a narrative focus. It's just so.
But what are the motivations
weird.
of the stick people then? Anyway.
Yeah, no, exactly.
What are the stick people's tax policies? Anyway.
Started this video, I read through a bunch of the old posts while scripting to see if there were any particular counter-arguments to consider before drafting this article that I would consider, What I found, however, was a lot of people arguing one simple thing. Sometimes simple is better. They would often say, assigning human morals to scary monsters makes them just misunderstood, or stop turning devils into sad men with scary suits, which, and you know what? I didn't have a counter-argument for that because I don't really disagree with it. We shouldn't turn devils all into sad men. They should be scary demons. We shouldn't assign human morals to scary monsters. They should be monsters, but we can make them understandable. The xenomorph is a monster, but it's an animal too. It is trying to follow its life cycle. But let me ask you this, why do you want something simple? At the end of the day, an evil race is boring only because it limits the types of stories you can tell, or at least the ways through which external conflict can manifest. It's not inherently bad. You can tell a good story with boring antagonists, but it is so disappointing when a story fails to engage with the potential of its world. It becomes a sentence half written.
Oh my god.
Why?
That sucks.
To answer your ending question, Ant, why do I want something simple? Because sometimes you just fucking want something that works for the purposes of other goals your story has on a conceptual focus. There you go.
Yeah,
And we
things are allowed to be
didn't need
straightforward.
55 fucking minutes to tell you that.
Yeah, like I don't really I
I feel
don't
like we
really
answered it at the
understand.
start.
Yeah, no, it's because it's just very intuitive. It's like the question of why would someone choose to go with a simple good versus evil structure for, or like, not really go into the character of their antagonist. Well, the answer is because they were interested in telling a story that doesn't have a narrative focus on the antagonist. They are simply a challenge to be overcome. Anyway, so in conclusion, if we want, which by the way is he doesn't even agree that character exists, because Glumbo, the supreme evil entity,
Here we go,
needs to be
folks.
needs to be non-genetic, needs to be not a unique individual, needs to not be part of any particular species with animalistic traits or culture that has particular cultural underlines of evil that force the pressure to evil. There cannot be an underlying cause for its evil that's external to societal cultural pressures. Further to that, it also cannot really be a devil or demon, provided said devil or demon is a large threat, unique individual, and or offers a Faustian bargain. Further to this, Glumbo also cannot be part of a particular organization. It cannot have comprehensive motivations, because if it has a comprehensive motivation, it has an incomprehensible motivation. That's basically good enough by way of evil. It cannot be a machine. It cannot really be an alien, so long as the alien has any sort of again, underlying cause for its evilness, and it also cannot, and especially cannot, be like understandable. So there you
So
go. That's
there you
Glumbo.
go.
So
That is Ant's ideal villain right there. That is Ant's ideal villain race right
well,
there.
no, that's his biggest boogeyman, dude. It's like
Yes.
there's like two of them out there. I
Yeah.
promise you that there's two characters like that exist that Ant is really upset about existing because they make everything
Yes.
fucking shit.
Yes. Oh my
It's
god.
just like, even by the way, Ant, like even for it's just the reason I'm taking the piss out of you is like, even for things like you brought up in this video, like the aliens for Independence from Independence Day, they have an underlying cause. Their underlying cause is they want to assimilate another planet.
Mhm.
There you go.
Yeah.
You can come like once you come up with an underlying cause as a motivation, you can fucking come for it. Like you can go for anything. There you go. It's not. You need to seriously like this is listen. This is just some friendly advice, right? Don't know you, probably never will, but you need to seriously like reevaluate how you conceptualize morality. Because
Yes, Ant, please.
the second video I've seen from you, where you're completely fucking yourself and you seem very confused about like what actually morality even is.
Yes.
It's not. I know, like, at the end you ask why you think simple is better. You're oversimplifying this issue.
He's oversimplifying it and he's overcomplicating it for himself. Yes.
Yeah, like he tries to do it just like a simple breakdown of, oh, this is boring, and then he creates an incredibly like a massive intellectual jungle gym for himself as to why that needs to work.
Yes.
Where you can just say, and hear me out here, and no one would give you flack for saying this. I kind of don't like where there's there's a one-dimensional antagonist. I'm not a fan of those stories, and literally no one would care. Not a soul in the world would give you grief for that if you just said that.
Oh.
It's completely fine.
Oh, we've been going for over 3 fucking hours with this shit. Well, anyways, guys, if you guys enjoyed this episode and you're evil bastards and you're an evil bastard like me, comment below what you thought of you, subscribe for more videos like this, and we'll see you guys next time in the backseat. Take care.